Good evening and welcome to the September 12th school board meeting of the Derry Cooperative School District. We will get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you please rise.
Recording in progress.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Now that we are in the meeting, we'll start with the approval of the minutes. We have August 8th minutes from our workshop. I will take a motion to approve the minutes from the August 8th workshop.
So moved.
The first by Jason, second by Kearney. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 6-0. Move on to the public and non-public meeting minutes from August 22nd. So I'll start with entertaining a motion to accept the public meeting minutes from August 22nd.
I do just have one alteration. There's a couple of times that just my name is spelled incorrectly. I'm not sure if that's needed to change, but just wanted to throw out there.
I think we can, I don't think we need a motion, but we can correct the spelling of Kearney's name. Is it first, last name?
It's I-E, not I-Y.
Okay. Any other comments about the August 22nd minutes? All right, we'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes then.
So moved.
First by David,
Second.
second by Jason. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes 6-0. Move on to the non-public portion of the meeting minutes for August 22nd. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
First by Kearney,
Second.
second by Jason. Not seeing any discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
I'm going to abstain, I wasn't there.
Okay, we have one abstention, so motion passes 5-0-1. All right, at this time, we would be moving on to the high school updates.
Mr. Chair, can I make a motion, please? I would like to make a motion to move delegations and individuals to right before our Pinkerton update.
I have a first motion by David to move delegates and individuals from 16th on the agenda to, I guess, 3rd on the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Michael. Any conversation or any discussion on that?
I guess just the only question, are we going to be, is it discussing agenda items for tonight, agenda items from previous?
So the policy is written as delegates and individuals. Their residents may address the school board on agenda items. So if we just move it, then it would just be moving that agenda item up.
Okay, thank you.
And that was your motion, correct? Okay. So I do have a comment on this. Couple things. I understand we've gotten some feedback regarding this. I know even Kearney had brought this up at the last board meeting. I would have us go through the policy committee and have that discussion and have that brought to the board. That's kind of my thought process, but I'm just one person in that. Also, changing it as is, we're only going to have one 30-minute portion, so moving this up without a lot of notice, which I know we can't really give. People may have been planning on coming a little bit later in the meeting. There's that. And then my thoughts around this is, I know I've received feedback as we have discussed this, that if this is something that we were to change our policy and do at the beginning, I think we're still going to run into similar concerns where people are going to say we're not listening to or having discussions around after we talk about these things, and when you're only going to be able to have the public essentially address issues from the prior board meeting. So those are my individual concerns, but I'm open to hear any.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. We have, as the policy committee talked about getting a meeting where we're going to have a proposed change to that policy. And also, I don't know if this does any good for tonight, but I was looking at what some other districts do. Nashua takes their 30 minutes and splits it into two 15s. They have one at the beginning and they have one at the end. I don't know if that's something that we could do for tonight, but it's something worth looking into when we talk about changing the policy.
I would agree with, that would be the best path here today, since we didn't give any notice that it wouldn't be at the end.
That would require a change to the. Sorry, that would require a change to the motion on the table. Any other further thoughts, questions, comments? Do you want to amend the motion?
I will amend my motion to provide delegation individuals for 15 minutes prior to our Pinkerton update and 15 minutes at its originally scheduled time tonight. And we can discuss further, any further changes in policy committee moving forward. This is a temporary motion for tonight.
Second that.
All right, so the amended motion is to do delegations and individuals for 15 minutes as agenda item 3, moving everything else down, and then where it was placed before, which I believe would move it to, I guess, 17th, but that's the amended motion, seconded by Jason. Now, is there any other further conversation regarding this?
Does this have to go through policy?
If to make a permanent change, yes, this would need to go through policy.
Okay, because that's not what I was told.
Okay, well, we'll figure that out in the yeah, we'll figure that out on policy and
No,
if, yeah.
that's fine.
Our policy was changed 2 years ago to address what citizens could talk about. So we would have to change that part in policy, and that has been discussed for a year to bring that policy back. We just haven't gotten it done.
And I know that we've all talked about getting a meeting on the books to address that, so.
And I did email the policy committee the other school policies that address that particular section.
Any other thoughts on this before we move to a vote? All right, seeing none, I don't think there's a need for a roll call vote, but, so I'll do all in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so, any opposed? I'm a no. Are you, is that,
No, I said aye.
you said aye, all right, no abstention, so motion passes 5-1. So now we will go on to next charter school, which unfortunately, Ms. Fitzgerald is not able to attend tonight, so we do not have a next charter school update. So we will move on to delegates and individuals. So at this point, I would invite anyone from the public to the podium. As you sit down, please state your name, your address for the record, address the entire board. You will have 3 minutes, and then we'll allot 15 minutes for the entire group. Upon the completion of those 3 minutes or 15 minutes, there may be an opportunity to extend that time if a board member decides to make that motion and it gets passed. So at this time, I'll invite members of the public to come on up.
Good evening. Richard Tripp, 44 Wyndham Road. Well, I want to welcome Mr. Henry. It's nice to see somebody new, a smiling face. I guess I had intended to speak at the end of the meeting, since that's when we have something to talk about, things that you talked about. But since you haven't talked about anything yet, it's difficult to find something to talk about. So I did attend the facilities workshop last night, and I found that very informative. As I see this, it's on the agenda again tonight. I was hoping that I would get some clarity on what had been discussed last night. But since you guys haven't discussed it yet, it makes it difficult for me to comment on things that haven't been discussed. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak about nothing right now, and I'll be back at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Tom Carden, 2 Cunningham Drive. I think this is a breath of fresh air for the school board to have this public forum at the beginning of the meeting. Town council has done it for years. It's worked out remarkably well. And I hope that you would consider continuing doing this. I'm not sure if we need to do a 15 in the beginning, 15 at the end. But anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'll move on. I just had some comments about the last school board meeting that I attended. You know, I know you had talked about building a new school for $75 million and adding another $25 million for repairs to the school, which would have put one warrant article at $75 million. Excuse me. I think it's important that they are standalone warrant articles. My biggest concern is that, you know, $100 million is not going to be passed by the taxpayers. And I think it's going to be hard anyway for you guys to, you know, to get a new school for $75 million in. And really your priority right now should be to fix the schools. I mean, I don't know what the final cost is. I know originally it was over $100 million. And, you know, that's a lot of money. And, you know, you guys have really inherited a facilities nightmare. And, you know, unfortunately, it's going to be your responsibility to put money together to fix it. It didn't happen overnight, and it's not going to be fixed overnight. But, you know, hopefully, you know, you guys will have a clear plan on what you're going to do for the facilities. And, you know, I wish you, you know, I wish you a lot of luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We have any other takers for the evening? For the first 15 minutes. All right. At this moment, I would close public comments or delegates and individuals part 1, and we will move on to the Pinkerton Academy update. Like Richard said, we have, excuse me, a newest member here. So we have, I believe, Anthony, your sophomore at
Yes.
Pinkerton. So he was elected as the student delegate from Pinkerton Academy. So we're looking forward to hearing updates about what's going on at Pinkerton. So the floor is all yours, Anthony, and welcome.
Okay, thank you. Well, first, I must insist that everyone call me Anthony and not Mr. Henry. I think at this point we should all be on a first-name basis, because I've been here a while, one capacity or another, whether out there or here. But anyway, Pinkerton is back. We had our orientation days on August 30th and August 31st. We had freshmen and juniors one day, then sophomores and seniors the next. And this, getting into events, this Saturday, September 16th, is the senior corn roast. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure what it is, because I'm not a senior, but it's been the thing the seniors do every year, one of their big, you know, last big events before they graduate, so that'll be fun. September 18th through the 22nd is Spirit Week at Pinkerton, and it'll end with Friday the 22nd, big pep rally at Pinkerton, and then the Mac Plaque football game at 6 p.m., and all students are expected to wear red and white. And September 23rd will be the Mac Plaque homecoming dance, and kind of jumping around here, but September 21st will be the Pinkerton Hall of Fame ceremony and dinner. This year's inductees are Bonnie Shaw Eckerman, class of '93, who's on the Board of Trustees, Therese Kerman, former faculty member, John Porter, one of the original trustees back in 1815, Stephanie Elaine Savard, class of '88, and Howie Stedman, former faculty. And over the summer, a communications survey went out, kind of asking how Pinkerton can better communicate news, social medias, that type of thing to the public. So that went out. Students and parents answered that. This year, we welcomed our new associate head of school, Mr. Michael Perez. I'm sure you all have met him at some point, and if you haven't, you should. He's a great guy. And social studies building construction, still going on. Site work is pretty much complete. Foundation should be done if it's not already. And next will be vertical construction. So if there's no questions, I'm ready to wrap up.
All right, thank you, Anthony. Any questions from the board? Comments? No? I have a question. Is the Mac Black game at Pinkerton this year?
Yes, it's a home game.
Okay. And the other thing is, you mentioned the Hall of Fame dinner. Colonel Stedman actually started the ROTC program at Pinkerton Academy. And so just wanted to give a shout out to the work that he's done. It's really specifically touched my family closely, as my brother is in the Air Force, and he was one of the first graduating members of the JROTC class, and so does great work and gives a lot of opportunities to kids outside of, athletics, music, theater. So if you have a kid in high school, get them into JROTC. It's a great program over there.
They do really great work. I have a lot of friends that are in there.
All right. Moving on. Thank you, Anthony. We have, I'm not seeing Joe. Oh, wait, this is the old agenda. That's why. We have a data update from Ms. Conan, Ms. Long, and Ms. Sarah Taylor. So thank you guys for coming, and we're looking forward to the presentation.
Oh, right here, yeah, yeah. I'm like, it's okay. All right, so, can you hear us? All right, thank you. So, we are here to present an overview of the New Hampshire Statewide Assessment System, New Hampshire SAS, data, and the Northwest Evaluation Association, which is NEWA data. These assessments play a role in assessing student achievement and guiding our instruction. By analyzing this data, we can gain valuable insights in student performance and make data-driven decisions to improve our curriculum. The New Hampshire SAS data is the state standardized assessment system designed to measure student proficiency in various subjects. We administer this annually in the spring to two specific grade levels in the areas of English language arts, mathematics, and science. The data provides a snapshot of how our students are performing compared to state standards, allowing us to identify areas of strength and weaknesses in both curriculum and instruction. The NEWA is an adaptive assessment that is administered 3 times a year to measure growth and identify instructional needs. The NEWA data allows us to monitor student growth and adjust instruction accordingly. This assessment provides us with more frequent and granular view of student progress compared to the SAS data. The NEWA assessment adapts to individual student abilities and supports personalized instruction for each student. We use NEWA data in our intervention programs to identify learning needs, as well as assign students to their personalized learning path in the Amentum Exact Path program, tailoring instruction to their individual needs. Analyzing both the SAS and the NEWA data enables us to make informed decisions, foster accountability and transparency, and continue to improve in our curriculum needs. Lisa and Sarah are now going to share an overview of our math and literacy data.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lisa Long, a director of mathematics, so I think maybe I'll talk about math. So this first slide is a overview of our New Hampshire SAS that we take in the spring in math 3 through 8. It shows the last 3 springs, and those numbers are the percent of students who scored proficient or above. On that assessment, they are identified in 4 levels, level 1, 2, 3, and 4, and proficiency is considered levels 3 and 4. The next slide is one of our couple slides I have about the NEWA. This is the achievement data for K through 5. This is the percentage of students at each grade level that are at or above grade level mean. Now that grade level mean is at the 50th percentile, meaning according to their norm referenced information, depending where students started or actually where they score there, it is based on that 50% of students will score at or above that, and 50% of students will score at or below that. So so our students hover around that average, around that 50%. Same type of data, except this is our 6 through 8. Again, these are a percentage of students who scored at the 3 different testing windows at or above that grade level mean. And again, the grade level mean is based on the 50th percentile. This is my last slide about NEWA. This hones in on growth for grades 1 through 8. This is from fall to spring last year. These are the percentage of students who met or exceeded their projected growth. And again, that growth target that is identified is based on the 50th percentile, meaning where those students scored in the fall, what roughly 50% or above the students will score this in the spring, or 50% below that 50th percentile. And I have a couple more things to say. All right. And we use all of this data to inform our curriculum and instruction designs and decisions. We had curriculum teams meet over the summer who took a look at some of this data, and we have been refining in our competencies in math. We did that this summer, and sort of refining our ICANN learning targets. We also had 47 of our staff members this last year attend OGAP training, which is designed to look at how students learn math and grow their mathematical thinking. And it's designed to look at how they're thinking now and how we can move them in a learning progression of being able to learn math more. And we also, another thing we're working on is our middle school math teachers, as well as our PACE math teachers, have been studying a book on building thinking classrooms, which provides 14 strategies on that, and we are targeting the first 3 strategies of that. We started working on that this fall. So just some of the things that looking at data and talking about data and looking at our students' success, what things we're working on.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Okay. I am Dr. Sarah Taylor. I am the literacy director. Again, we're looking at the New Hampshire SAS. So when you see the SAS, you see that several grade levels are hovering around that 50% meeting or exceeding grade level proficiency. We did notice a little bit of a dip when we're looking at grade 7, and there's a lot of things that we're doing to look into that and see where the discrepancy was for that grade level. And when we drill down further into the domains and we look to compare fiction versus nonfiction and writing, and look at areas of strength and weaknesses and where we could do better to help with student achievement. Next slide. Okay, so this is NEWA reading achievement for grades K through 5. And we see that students across the board are getting above that 50th percentile, like Lisa was talking about. And I really look at grade 2 because that is the grade level where the test changes. So instead, in K and 1, the test is being read to students, so they're really being assessed on their language comprehension. Whereas in grade 2 and above, they are starting to have to read it by themselves, and that really gets into reading comprehension. So seeing those scores at where they're at is nice to see. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, and this is grades 6 through 8, and again, we're hovering around the 50th percentile mark, and there is a bit of a decline when you see each year. So we're looking at ways to address that, particularly in how we can make it curriculum adjustments and have conversations with middle school students to recenter that why, because obviously when you're taking an assessment on the computer and you're like, oh, this is boring, it's middle school. So, and the text is long. So just trying to help focus them in on how we can use strategies to attack a longer text, read the questions, read the text, let's not guess, all of those things. We've been having great conversations around all of that. Thank you. Okay, this is our growth K through 8. And looking at students who met or exceeded their projected growth, we see that several grade levels are around 50% who met that growth target, with just a few under that. And it's very typical to see a faster rate in the primary grades because they're really building those foundational skills. And then we kind of get a little bit of a dip in the older grades when they have a little bit of a less growth target to meet, if that makes sense. So whereas you might have like 9 or 10 points, some might have 3 to go. So it's a little bit trickier for them, but we again continue to look at all of our curriculum to make adjustments for achievement. So now that we're looking at all this data, what have we been doing about it? A lot of things. Last year, I broke down all the NEWA data by domain, by grade level, and had a lot of great conversations with teachers doing data protocols on how do we, or what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, and what do we do about those weaknesses when we find them. And then our curriculum committees have met over the summer to look at where those weaknesses are and kind of refine and adjust the leverage standards and ICANN statements to reflect that. We've also been responding a lot to new legislation around literacy. There's been a lot of it. It's been exciting and kind of like scary too, because we have a lot to do fast. But everybody's doing really good at responding to it. And one of those things that we did is we implemented University of Florida Institute's new phonics program, also known as UFly. And it's a really great research-based, explicit instruction on phonemic awareness, decoding, and it has a heavy emphasis on encoding, which is spelling, which is where we need to be, because if you can spell the word, you can read the word. So that's where we're really drilling in on primary grades. And in middle school, I wrote a grant that was for middle school novels so that we could really get into small group instructions, do more book clubs, so that frees up the teacher to do more targeted, focused small group instruction. So we're still really working on that. We have an awesome turnout to an evidence-based literacy professional development program. It's Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling, also known as LETTERS. There's a lot of acronyms. We have 126 teachers right now enrolled in that program, and 103 of those teachers are in, it's a 2-year program as opposed to a 1-year program. So it's a huge commitment. So a huge shout out to all of those teachers taking that program. This first year was last year concentrated on early literacy, and we already see the dividends that has been paying off in our instruction. And this next year we focus on getting to more word study, comprehension, and reading, writing connection. So I'm really excited to see where that takes us. And I get to talk about science. So in science, we take the SAS assessment in 5th grade and 8th grade. That is when it's measured. So as you can see, this last spring, our proficiency in 5th grade was 39%, and in 8th grade, 36%. And in science, we have a science specialist, Angela Barber. She is really working on 2 main goals. She's trying to align the curriculum with all 3 dimensions of the next generation science standards, and she's creating consistency between both the classrooms and the schools. She's also in the process of writing instructional guides For all the science units in each grade level, she ensures that the lessons, the activities, the assignments, assessments all align with the standards. And we are working on common assessments and rubrics so that when teachers look at that student evidence that they have, they're looking at the same rubric and grading the same way. So as we move forward, and we will continue to look at all of our data to inform our curriculum and instructional needs.
Got a question.
Thank you for this presentation. I appreciate it. Open up to the board for questions or comments. I'm going to go Jason first, I guess. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you for putting this all together. So looking through, I have a couple questions. I'd like to see, if possible, some pre-COVID data, 2017, 2018, 2019, to see how the students are matching up against pre-pandemic. I went through the presentation and I counted 48 total data points just year over year, so 23 versus 22. And to be honest, some of the numbers are a little, they're kind of staggering because there's a lot of decline. I'm going to use math. There were 3 data points that showed improvement, 23 versus 22, 9 that declined with 3 flat. Really a big emphasis, 5, 6, and 7, and I have a 7th grader now, so I really see it. I want to, and you say 50th percentile is the mean, and that's kind of the average. To me, it looks like there's a decline, right? So even around, if we're hovering around, but when you look at all of the charts, everything seems, not everything, but kind of what I said here, a lot of it seems to be trending down, right? So I guess the question is, and Kim, we've talked about it, but measuring, right? What's tangible, right? I hear conversations, I hear discussions, but I guess what I'd like to see is, what are we going to do to actually improve? Like, where does the rubber meet the road to push these kids to get them where they need to be? As a parent, not even as a school board member, so I'm sitting here as a parent, I'm concerned, right, about when my daughter gets to Pinkerton. She hasn't had homework in years. So when I talk middle school and we look at these results, there's no homework. We talk about competencies. There's a gap, right? We talk math. She struggles in math. I struggled in math. I had to go to math clubs and math this and math that and sent to the summer program to get extra math. A lot of kids have that, right? It doesn't, our brains don't click where it just happens. My wife and I discussed, like, how is she going to get better at math if she doesn't have to do any additional math outside of the classroom, right? And the same for reading. So the numbers don't lie. 5, 6, 7, 8, really 6 and 7, that's a sharp decline in 6. And then what happens? 6, 7, 8, boom, they're off to Pinkerton. And then there's piles of homework and all sorts of things going on. So my ask, and I don't need an answer today, but at some point, my ask is, how do we get from point A to point B to show tangible results that the kids are getting the education that they need? Because again, as a parent, I'm concerned. As a board member, I'm very concerned, but the results aren't good enough, right? And I don't want to sugarcoat, believe in transparency. I need to see how we're going to improve and get the kids on the right path, right? Because year over year, there's a decline.
Can I just make a comment about homework? In math specifically, on homework, our students are struggling with their mathematical thinking. So if we give more homework without the thinking, they just continue to spiral in not solid thinking. So we have actually moved more of the practice to in the classroom so that they can get the support and the redirection that they need. That's sort of recent research over the last several years, is that practicing it incorrectly or insufficiently is actually negative, rather than more practice producing better thinking.
One thing I would challenge, though, you're saying the studies in the recent years, but the recent years, the data doesn't reflect.
I mean, our data, I just mean about math instruction in general,
Sure.
and homework. That's all I was saying. We do practice. It's
And
just
I'm not an
in-
educator, so
Yep.
I'm not, but
Yep.
I went through school, obviously, and I had homework my entire life. It's just a little shocking and concerning that I get COVID and, we did the remote thing and the kids, we were just trying to make sure the kids were fine, but COVID is long in the rearview mirror at this point. I want to know how we're going to improve, not just the testing, right? Because it's not about just having teachers and educators teach to the testing. I get the competency piece, but for me, homework at least seems to be a critical piece that's missing, right? And I'm not, we are, as parents, have to be the ones to enforce the homework and make sure it's done and sit at the dinner table and get the homework done. No one's saying that a 6th grader, 7th grader, 8th grader should have 2 or 3 hours of homework a night, but I've said it a lot, a couple assignments throughout the week to keep things going when they're not in the classroom, I think would be beneficial. I mean, that you all are the professionals. This is my opinion as a parent and as a board member.
And then the other thing I just wanted to comment on is, although COVID is in our rear view, thankfully, the research, the experts have told us 3 to 5 years of recovery, and the experts also tell us that math will take longer than that because it's such a building upon building. So yes, and we have made steps. We need to make bigger steps. But yeah, although it is historical, we're still recovering from it.
So should we be working harder against closing that gap faster so the kids who did go through COVID aren't lost?
Or
Right.
what improvements can we make now knowing that? Of like, what did they miss? And what can we do to improve the areas that they did miss and fill that into their current classroom now?
Well, we have refined the curriculum, so over last year. So that is one step. So that was the first thing. And we keep looking at that. So the I can statements are more streamlined. The other thing is that we're doing more small group instruction. We also, at the middle school level, because that is the 3 to 5 year gap, they're in the middle school, and I completely agree. We are doing more focus and flex block that is going to be more data driven for those students who actually have those gaps, so that we can fill those gaps quicker. And that we are giving more professional development in the in math, like Lisa said, OGAP and all these and other program or professional development. We are trying to tighten up some of that core instruction so that the gaps are not as.
So do you believe that the 5, 6, 7, 8 intermediate model will help fill some of those gaps once we actually transition into that model? Then I also do have concerns about only being able to see just the small data point. I would love to see what it was prior to COVID versus where we're at now to really get a good grasp of where we're at now. Just because I don't feel like this is enough data to really grasp where we're at. And then are there any other initiatives or things that you feel like we could be doing to help teachers fill that gap because of how they can integrate that into their classroom? I love everything that you said about the 126 teachers in the 2-year program. I think that's amazing. Are there smaller or less of a lift for those parents, for those teachers that maybe have young kids or just don't have the capacity to do that could still get that training?
Yeah, so I'm actually in all of the trainings.
Love that.
And I'm also becoming a facilitator. So I go around and help support those teachers because certainly there is not an expectation that people sign up for a 2-year course because there just are those that just don't have that capacity. So I am going around and helping those teachers so that things that we are rolling out, like UFly, for example, kind of take a special understanding as to the why behind some of the practices that are steps in the program. So I've gone around multiple times talking with teachers and really helping build them up on those pieces. And I think just continuing that professional development, building their capacity, because we are still seeing that decline. Like, we're building the plane as we're trying to fly it kind of thing with those students that did not get these solid foundational years and are now in middle school trying to apply things that they just might not have.
Yeah.
So we are consistently going in and saying, okay, how can we do this at the same time? We're not just gonna let them flounder. What are we going to do to help target our instruction, get more small groups happening in the middle school, and move from there so that we are addressing everything?
Could someone also just speak on that special education area of it? I mean, I'm not a huge fan of standardized testing anyways, because I feel like it's biased. But it is still important. It is still a gauge. It is still our data set that we have to work with right now. So it is still important to see that we're not falling behind and we're still living up to the education standards that we want to provide our students. But with said, could you give me a little bit more background on how we've gotten to where we're at, especially with our special education students, and how that affects the scores, and any background on that?
So I can talk to literacy. So a couple of years ago, Laura and I kind of got together with another reading specialist because obviously with COVID and everything happening, we were really concerned with that population of students. So, and with new legislation around structured literacy versus balanced literacy and all of those things, we actually implemented a intervention program through the company Lexia. It's called Core 5 for the elementary school and Power Up for middle school. And it's a very targeted, research-based, explicit literacy program to help address those gaps. And so last year was our first year of implementation of that. So it was a lot of helping the special ed teachers with a new model, because a lot of times it was a kind of tweaking the classroom curriculum, but this is, let's address specific gaps that students have and then move them forward. So it's been widely successful so far, and we had our first data meeting this the beginning of last week or something, or the end of last week, with the company going over data, and then we set new goals for this year, focusing on growth.
That's
and
great.
It's so far so good.
I would love to see any of that, if you have it available too, just to understand it a little better. But thank you guys for everything that you do. I know this is a hard task, and it's one of the harder ones that we have, but I appreciate everything that you guys do.
I also wanted to say too that the early release days that we have coming up, we have one, those are going to also be targeted for looking at student evidence, looking at data, giving the teachers time. So we are really working on that. So, you know, my job, I was new this last year at this role. So I was really looking at the data. I'm looking at the gaps, the needs. I'm working with my team here to provide that professional development, provide that time. You all are so great because you gave us the early release days in our calendar, which is great. So they will have the time to start looking and having those data-driven conversations around that and looking at student evidence so that we can move forward. And we're in the buildings a lot to provide that professional development with them.
And are you guys do you guys feel like that switch to the intermediate model will help some of these problems?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, anything will.
So
Not as much, but just wanted it on record.
So thank you for providing this. Is great, and it's good timing because in the next month or two we have to make a decision, a very big decision as a board in our budget meetings, where we need to fund at the school level math interventionists, reading specialists, science, and a couple other positions that we need to fund. So my question is, you know, the current model we have, we've done it for 2 years now, right? We've funded it at close to $2 million for those 2 years with ESSER funds. So now we get it funded through our operating budget this year. My question is the current model that's in place the right way to utilize that fund still? Or do we need to look at a different model? Or, because these are the kind of questions and answers we need to make those decisions to expend those funds, because now we're adding to the budget. Hopefully we offset some of the savings that we're going to receive on other areas, but I think the number is $1.2 million, and that includes nurses and a couple other things, but overall, that's the number we're looking at to continue what we're doing. And I want to make sure that what we're doing the last 2 years is the path forward to address some of the stuff that Jason just mentioned. And if it's not, that's okay, but we need something, because I don't not want to fund it to bridge the gap. I want to continue with the funding personally, but I need to be assured that the path we're on is the correct path, or do we need to do something different?
So right now, we're currently looking at all that data and we're compiling it, and we will have another presentation on the math intervention data for you at the first fiscal advisory and school board meeting.
Thank you.
So I think it's important to realize that the 6th and 7th graders were in.
Brenda, I don't think your mic is on.
Oh, sorry, can you, it's on.
Oh, may not be close enough.
I think it's important to realize that the 6th and 7th graders were 3rd and 4th graders when we went out with COVID. And now 3rd grade is a huge developmental year for children. So being out of school for the spring of that year and then going back into school or being home, there definitely were developmental things that didn't happen. So that definitely affects these scores. I think it's also important to realize that, because I don't love standardized tests either for children, but I do love them for us, because we can look at what children don't know or what they're still trying to understand. They don't grasp whatever the concept is, whether it's math or reading, and we can adjust what we do to better serve them. So I think that's an important piece to add to test scores. And it's one piece of data. We have people working in the classrooms every day that are working to bring children to the level that they need to be, whatever that is. I don't want to judge that, because some children are here and some children are here and some children are here. But as long as they're making growth, that's really what's most important. And it probably would be great at some point, and I don't even know how you could possibly do this with all our children and all our staff, but if we could have additional information about how teachers assess that growth, even if it's in like 6th and 7th grade, which I agree with Jason. When I saw them, I was concerned, but then I went back and said, wait, 3rd and 4th grade. It would be great to understand how teachers assess growth in addition to a graph, right? Like what does it take for them to understand someone is making growth, whether it's like this slow growth or whether it's like this kind of growth, which isn't normal, but if just to know how that works and how we're sure that they're growing, I guess.
So we have, so with the new UFly program that Sarah was mentioning, we do have every week they have to progress monitor. So we do have for the K to 3, and also the 4 through 5, we have an advanced study that they also will progress monitor. So we will continue to progress monitor those kids, all kids, every single week. For math, for science, we definitely have we're moving towards the common assessments, what I had talked about in science, and we're moving towards that in math, so that we can look at the competencies in the ICANN statements, and that we can say, okay, are they making growth? Are they on target with those competencies compared to the NEWA and the SAS data? So that is something that's in development this year.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Just an added, we also get growth information through our Admentum Learning Paths as well.
Anyone else from the board have anything?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I had one question. I mean, obviously, standardized testing is one metric. Some kids just don't test well, especially once you get to the middle school level. I know kids kind of get the sense that, this test doesn't really affect their grade at all. And, so, I'm curious, what other metrics that we have, from what the teachers are observing in the classrooms, from, grades that, kids get on the work that they're doing in the classrooms, as opposed to just standardized testing data. And another question that I had too is, obviously we have this data, and do we have comparisons to data points at the state level, the national level, of how we're doing compared to other districts in others, in this state, other states, so we can kind of get a grasp of, where we are relative to everywhere else.
You want to try?
So the first part of your question, we do a lot of talking about everything that we do with the students is evidence. That goes from every paper that comes our way, every conversation we have with one-on-one students, small groups, when we listen to how they talk to each other, in my case about math, all of those are pieces of evidence that teachers take into account to evaluate where students are in their progress. Everything is evidence, including these standardized tests. As far as your question about the assessments and national comparisons and so forth. So the NEWA is normed nationally. So all those 50th percentiles we're talking about are based on millions of data points and over thousands of students at different levels. So all of that is national. The state does provide some comparisons across for the SAS, although I have not seen it yet for last spring. I'm keep looking for it, but I haven't seen it as far as how we compared to, I know what we did, but how we compared with others last spring.
Anyone else? All right. I just have a few comments as well. I won't belabor the point I think a lot of other people has made as well. But just some thoughts that I have is, I want to see progress. I think we all want to see progress. I'm sure, we have we have metrics. I would love to see, a whole 360 view if we could. I think competency-based competencies are going to help us with that as well and kind of tell, a full picture. So my hope is that, that plan is a foundation in which we are putting in place and will be successful. And like kind of David said, to your point, like, is what we're doing, is it working? And, how do we do that? But even just thinking about, as we look forward next year, what are some of the goals that we have? If we were presented all this data, right, where do we want to be next year and how do we get there? I think even sharing that is going to be, beneficial to, everybody. And, it takes a whole community in order to, do these things. And I'm not going to sit up here and argue the merits of, homework and things like that, but I'm sure there's, activities that we could be doing, or, we can be encouraging our students and families to be doing that as well. And I'm also very aware of the fact that, we all have different things going on in our lives, and, some families and students are able to do some of those things, and some others can as well. So I think it's just really important for us to understand, try and get as much of the 360 view as we can, make sure that we have a belief in the system and that we are going toward, not only achievable goals, but also even setting some aspirational goals, so that we can actually strive to hit those, and knowing, all right, where are we going and how are we going to get there, I think is really important for everybody to know as well. Joe, Austin, anything you guys want to add?
I can just add that I think obviously these three people and all the teachers that they support are working really hard on this, and this is challenging stuff. I don't think anybody wants to make excuses for anything. We all care very deeply about the success of students. I did quickly double check the state. Somebody asked about state comparison, and the 23 data isn't out yet statewide, but we can compare ourselves to the 22 data, and we're really, really in line with state averages. Not to say that's good or bad, but it's a reference point. For instance, statewide in math, there was only one grade level that was at or above 50% of students who were proficient, and that was grade 3 at the state level in 2022. And in reading, there were only 2 grade levels that hit 50% of students proficient K-8. So when I was just tracking, it's different because I'm looking at 2 different charts going back and forth, but our numbers are some of those trends are very, very, very similar to what you see at the state level. People can see that data. The New Hampshire Department of Ed has a platform called iAchieve. You can access it on their website, and it's really great. They've got matrices, they've got years worth of data there. Well, I can only see 2018 through 2022, but there's a lot of data there. I don't know what, I know how hard you guys are working. Everybody is working to improve the data, so.
Yeah, I want to echo what these ladies do and the confidence that I have in them and what they're doing out into the schools, and as well as the gentleman to my right, Mr. Crawford. and taking a lot of notes and getting your questions. And we will go back to the office and we will sit down and discuss these and see what we may be able to bring forward in the future.
All right. Well, thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
All right. And we will move on to the next agenda item, which is social emotional learning competencies. And we'll have Joe and Kim do a presentation on this. So thank you so much.
Everybody, thank you for giving us some time to talk about this. This is actually a good transition because what I heard from several of you is, academic achievement data is one measure that we care about. So as you all are familiar with, we've been talking a lot about academic competencies over the past year, and we've developed, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of statements around learning expectations in the academic areas. You may also remember that we've also in the past reported out in areas that are sort of academic adjacent. Sometimes people call them soft skills. Back when I was a kid, they were called like effort and conduct. I think that was the two categories we reported on. We're sort of in a place now where we think a lot more about sort of the well-rounded aspects of the importance of a well-rounded education, and that we clarify what our expectations are for children. And so what we did is, and when I say we, Kim was more involved than I was, and then there are a bunch of people where I'll tell you about in a second that were more involved than we were. We took a look at social emotional learning competencies. We've heard a lot from people in the community, from you folks, that social emotional learning is a really important aspect of child development. We know that, but we also want to reinforce that we've heard it from others. Most recently, we've had a section of our report card that we've called dispositions. Some of you may remember that term. Those dispositions were attempting to sort of frame or describe what the most essential social emotional learning. We didn't use the term social emotional learning necessarily, I think, in our dispositions, but if you really think about them, things like perseverance, like self-knowledge, these are really social emotional learning competencies. So the next slide will show you there were a group of people that got together this summer. They formed a team and included administrators and teachers from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade was represented. And we wanted to look at a really comprehensive framework for social emotional learning. And what I mean by that is something that's grounded in science, something that's grounded in research, and something that isn't us making stuff up, right? So we wanted to look at what other states and other organizations were using. And really the leader, if you were to, I'm not encouraging you to do this, but if you were to go into Google right now and type social emotional learning, probably your first hit would be CASEL. The CASEL framework is the most recognized framework for organizing social emotional learning standards for kids. So we thought this was a really great place to work. I know we moved past that last slide, but it's really important to acknowledge the work that those people did. They were the ones that did all this research. I mean, Kim was also involved, so I'm not trying to throw shade at you.
No,
You did a great job
they did an
too.
awesome job.
But Melanie and Hillary were the two administrators that really led this work, and they solicited feedback from those teachers. And the work that we've accomplished in this area is in large part due to those people willing to come together over the summer and look at this. So this wheel gives you kind of a big picture view of the CASEL framework. And there are really kind of 5 important sort of elements or pieces to this that kind of make up a whole person. And these impact the way in which individuals sort of either are successful or run into struggles in really all aspects of their lives. We know that in the world of work, what employers tell us is that soft skills and social emotional learning skills, communication skills, team building skills, relationship skills, these are the things that make it or break it for people. Most people can learn how to do academic or cognitive tasks with some training, but this kind of work takes a lot of time and development over a person's kind of growing up and maturing, so we want to make sure that we are taking a careful look at this. Yeah, we can go on. I don't know when I'm supposed to stop talking and when Kim's going to talk. Am I talking about
Yeah,
this one
keep
too?
it, yeah.
Okay, she's the boss. So really, these 5 areas, we don't want to dive too deep right now, but these 5 areas represent a really holistic look at social emotional learning. If you're wondering, CASEL stands for the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. Again, you can, there's great resources on their website, including links to studies, including links to partnerships they have with state and national organizations, along with direct links to programs, instructional models that are aligned to these standards. So our goal is to begin ensuring that as we're working with students to develop these skills, we're using common language and that we're developing instructional plans to support these things. And I think it's important, and maybe it's obvious, maybe it's not. I think a potential question I could ask myself is like, whose responsibility is it to teach these skills to kids? It's a little bit of a rhetorical question, because the answer is it's everybody's responsibility to teach these things to kids. Now, do our guidance counselors have a large role in this? Of course, they are experts in these areas, but all of our teachers are also important kind of members of this team to work on these areas. When Kim and I were looking at this, we're like, man, it's really hard to make an argument that any of this stuff is not important. It can be difficult to put your fingers on exactly what they all are, because sometimes they're a little bit of multiple things. When you look at the sort of the far left here, that, I don't know if that's orange.
Orange.
These focus a lot on interpersonal skills. So these are the things about yourself that are really important to understand. So both having awareness of who I am, what are my struggles, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, and also how can I manage and control and be thoughtful in the way in which I understand myself. Those green ones are obviously the ways in which we interact with the world, right? So we need an awareness of other people, and we also need communication and relationship building skills. And of course, the yellow side is all about how do we then combine those 2 categories to be responsible, thoughtful decision makers. So yes, move on. I think you're going to talk a little here, or am I going to talk? You can talk.
Okay, I can talk. So the CASEL framework was really our what. It really was, it's our overarching competencies, and our how to get there is through responsive classroom practices. So last year we brought in responsive classroom. It is not a program, but it is a method of how we can get to the overarching competencies. So you may have heard of it in the younger grades, it's CARES. A lot of the schools, the elementary schools are using that. We also, I'm going to just go to the next slide here. So as you can see, the CASEL competencies are on the right, and the CARES are on the left. And so every single CARES part of responsive classroom feeds into the competency. And in responsive classroom, we have had over the summer 27 teachers and administrators went to the responsive classroom 4-day intensive training. We had representation from every single building, K through 8, in our district. And we also have put into place some book studies so that we are using that consistent common language for our students and for the classrooms. So this program, it will help us to have a progression to get to the competency level.
Yeah, and if some of you have children in the middle school, you may have heard them talk about morning meeting or community meeting. That's another practice that's closely associated with the responsive classroom practices. One of the ideas in responsive classroom is that that we have an opportunity to teach students some of this stuff and reinforce it and model it for them. As some of you know, I'm very interested in sense of belonging and the theories that are related to that. And, there are many, many psychological theories that talk about the role of non-familial relationships and that role that it plays in child development. So really, that's a fancy way of saying relationships with teachers and modeling from teachers. Kids learn, just as we all did, right? We learn how to be by being around other people. And so by sort of thoughtfully, actively designing opportunities to teach and reinforce these ideas, we're supporting our kids' development of these skills. Because the other side of the coin is we are living in a world in which social isolation and loneliness is more common. And I want to do the whole like in my day stuff, right? But we know that kids today spend less time in public and around other people. And that's not me. That is the truth, right? There was a big study that came out at the beginning of this year about loneliness and social isolation. It's on the rise. It's associated with some pretty unhealthy outcomes for people. And the reverse is also true. The key to living a long, happy life is to have relationships with people. So we know that these trends exist, and some of that stuff's outside of our control. Technology, social media, globalization, polarization, all of these factors that impact our ability to form relationships. But it even is a greater highlight to why we need to be thinking about these things in our schools. I'll stop talking now.
I think that's it.
Thank you.
I know.
Questions?
I do just have, I'll keep it short, but are there any specific skills or areas that we've identified in our students that they're struggling with? And if so, have we found a way to be able to adapt to better reach them? What I'm thinking is like students with ADHD or students that naturally struggle with some of these areas, of being able to integrate what we're seeing for those that struggle with that already.
I have a theory. So I don't have hard data to prove any of this. I think when we start measuring and assessing this, we'll be collecting data. So anecdotally, talking to teachers and observing classrooms, I think that, Brenda highlighted earlier, some of the effects of the COVID pandemic have been even less interactions with others. And so for our younger students coming into school environment, and, some of these kids that are coming now, they've been fortunate to maybe have been young enough where they may have missed, but we've got kids in first, second, third grade that were really in important kind of developmental stages when the world shut down. So understanding things like turn taking can be really hard for children. Effective communication skills, so like translating your feelings to something that somebody else would really understand, can be really hard if you've been isolated. So I think those are important. As you get to older students, I worked for 9 years in high school, and I think self-awareness is really, really important for older students because our goal is to build, for them to develop this sort of self-efficacy, belief that they're in control. That's my biggest goal when I think about what I want kids to graduate, is I want them to believe that they're in control of their lives and they get to make decisions. So yeah, those are some things that concern me, but I don't have data.
And then just one more is, what are we doing to make sure that the teachers are feeling comfortable with this and being able to add this into their classrooms and be able to adapt their own teaching style to this?
We're doing a lot of professional development on that as well.
All right. Just wanted it on
bringing in a
record.
lot. And we are working with the principals. The principals are partnering up, and they are also, the ones in charge of the book studies. They're, having staff meetings. They're talking about it. They're reading the books. So it is little pieces that will start to go into the classrooms to build that community.
I just want to say thank you both for this. I think that this is a big area that we're moving into and we have to take a harder look at, and I think it's going to help overall our students adapt into our classrooms. So I want to say thank you for bringing this forward and sharing with us.
Yeah. I think just to follow up on what Kim was just saying, if you go into our elementary schools, you're going to see a lot of morning meeting happening. If you get an opportunity to observe that, it's a really teachers are outstanding at this practice. So you walk in and you can see on their board, they've part of morning meetings literacy based, like we want to be sort of getting kids reading the agenda and talking about that kind of stuff. But the routines built into morning meeting are really I believe, pretty powerful. So our teachers are really good at it. I think a lot of that's credit to the
And
training.
the teachers, the teachers that went to the training, they are sharing with their other teachers, and they're sharing, morning meeting games, and it's all part of that building that community and sense of belonging in that classroom.
That's awesome to hear. I'd love to see it.
I can also say that, like, some of the I haven't been to the middle schools, but the elementary schools celebrate, right? So, last year, I was at one school where they were doing their celebration, and children are being recognized, but the best part for me was when the other children, K to 5, cheer, get up, high five, good job. That's all part of it, right? They're growing, they're being happy for somebody else who's recognized. It wasn't them, but they're happy for their friends that they got recognized, and they're also happy for teachers that are recognized, or other staff members, which is it goes a long way. It goes, like you said, during COVID, some children were not communicating with anybody but mom and dad and a sibling, or and not that that's bad, but it's also hard when you go to school and you're in a gym full of all of the students of the school and you don't know what to do with that. So I think that's a positive. I was also at another school where they were recognizing students with an opportunity to go to the book vending machine if you did something good. And I was in the office, and the child came in to get the principal, but said, "Hey, can you come and see how this works?" And I'm absolutely really excited to share the experience and show me the book and all of those things. So there's a lot of good going on, and it's a lot of effort, but it's a lot of good.
A lot of what I've heard about the CARES program comes from my son, who's in 4th grade, and he tells us about the assemblies and the awards, and I think it really has had a big impact.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just the stories that he relays to me from his classroom, and conversations the kids have, things the kids do. You can really see that it's having an impact. And yeah, I mean, his class was, the pandemic broke out when they were in kindergarten. They had a weird 1st grade year, a little more normal 2nd grade year, and it's just kind of starting to get back to normal. But yeah, I mean, just the stories that I've heard relayed, you can see that this is having an impact, and and helping them communicate and helping them feel like a member of the community and all that. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a great job on this program.
Anyone else? No?
Thank you.
Yeah, well, hold on, sorry. Sorry, dude. I do have a couple things. So yeah, I think this work is important. I guess the big question I have is, standardized testing. It's very quantifiable, right? Like, it's a number. Social emotional learning, there's no number, right? You can't say someone is 75% or they're growing at their social emotional learning. So kind of two-part question, like, how are we balancing that, right, between making sure we're spending the appropriate amount of times on both of those things, and what kind of impact are we starting to see, or challenges are we having with that social emotional learning is hopefully multiplying the effect on our regular core curriculum teaching, but what kind of pitfalls or challenges have we had that this is I would say very different than when I went to school, and I think most everyone up here went to school, right? These are not things that were talked about in school. So how is that a challenge from where we were to where we are now and where we're going as well? Sorry.
Yeah. So it was a multi-part question.
I was gonna say, there's a lot of questions.
I do think that the world is very different, and I think that's appropriate. I think that the social emotional learning competencies, whether it's through this CASTLE framework or the work that we've been doing in the past in Responsive Classroom, I think our teachers are very aware that this isn't separate from math and English and science. This is integrated into the way in which we teach and learn.
The truth is that the needs of this generation of students is different. You know, I have a 19-year-old student, and I don't, 19-year-old son, and you know, I think about his experience through adolescence, and it was quite different than mine. And so the needs that he had were things that were sometimes hard for me to wrap my head around. I think this is a very proactive approach to supporting the development of kids. I do think, you know, it's really, you're right. I don't know if there's a question, it was kind of built into that a piece around how do we quantify a student's social emotional learning health? So one way we do it, we develop things that we're going to measure, and we measure it, and we give kids feedback on this kind of stuff. But there are also other indicators, right, of kids' social emotional health. And some of that is academic indicators. Like there's a very, very strong correlation between, I'm going to make my pitch again, between sense of belonging and academic achievement. There's a very strong correlation between sense of belonging and attendance in school. There's a negative relationship between sense of belonging and school violence. So, you know, those are all other things that we should measure. And I would argue, and I hope to be here in a few weeks to argue, that we should also measure our kids directly, their sense of belonging, and try to understand how they feel about school. Because that frames their ability to, like, focus, right? When we think about like students who are struggling in school, many of them have missed instruction due to other things that have interfered. They're not that that they're not smart or that they don't work hard. It's that other stuff got in the way. And sometimes the other stuff that gets in the way is social emotional. Some of it is trauma. Some of it is environmental factors that are not the kid's fault. And so this approach attempts to mediate or mitigate some of those pieces by providing a supportive kind of caring framework. I don't know if I even began to answer all your questions, Jonathan. But.
The other thing is too is that the students in that are doing the CARES program and throughout the school, they are really self-reflecting, and they are either self-reflecting through drawing or self-reflecting through writing, and so they're more aware of themselves, and so that is another way of themselves measuring, not just the teacher.
Thank you. Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Love everything
Thank you.
about this, by the way.
Thank
And looks like, Joe, you're going to stay there? Maybe not.
Am I up next also?
I think so. I'm double checking the one online. I have the one from the other day, so. Yeah, we're on the restructuring plan.
All right, I don't think I have a necessarily a graphic or a presentation. We just we committed to, on a regular basis, just checking in with you guys. One of the ways in which we're trying to keep people up to date is through our district restructuring project plan. So we update that at least weekly. We meet as a SAU leadership team on a weekly basis. So we've most recently updated it today. So in terms of the big milestones and the big categories related to restructuring, we're for the most part have worked through a lot of the curriculum and instructional pieces. We were here in August, I think, talking about that. We've got a little bit more to do around co-curriculars, and that's coming. The reason that we're not there yet is we've got to get together with the Derry Education Association because part of the co-curriculars is actually in their collective bargaining agreement, Appendix A. So we have a meeting, I want to say next week. Yep, so we have a next week with the DEA to begin talking about those pieces, but we're in a really good place. We've actually submitted some initial thoughts about how we can modify that co-curricular arrangement to meet the needs of next year. The real big, two big pieces that are front and center right now for restructuring are the staffing decisions. So we've worked through a lot of the preliminary staffing pieces. One of the big sort of pieces that has been most present recently is looking at all of the positions, not necessarily the individual people. And so we've been careful to say that it's really important that we let teachers know where they're going to be next year as soon as possible. But before we can do that, we need to have a really good understanding of how many first grade teachers we need, how many second grade teachers we need, how many you do the math, right? There's a lot of positions that have to be ironed out. David already brought up that we have positions that are currently grant funded, and we need to decide, you all need to decide, but I think we need to make a case
which of those positions should be moved into the general fund, because currently the ESSER funds, that runs out at the end of this year. So we've made a lot of progress there. We've got kind of preliminary ideas about what our positions are looking like. We're waiting on a little bit more information, which is the next category, which is redistricting the residency neighborhoods of our town. So as you know, we've contracted with Davis Demographics, a demographic consultant, to look at where all of our students and families live. So we have 2 upcoming meetings. We've got a meeting with Davis Demographics, I believe tomorrow, that school leaders are so it's school administration and some principals are gonna be at. And then we'll be doing a stakeholder meeting on Thursday afternoon. Some of you folks, I think, will be there. We've also invited some parents. We've got members of the community. Jane is really heading up all of that work. Members of the DEA, we've got teachers, we've got representatives from the AFSCME union, which is our assistants union, all coming together to kind of look at these boundaries. And then the kind of final step is, and this is based on Davis Demographics and what they've done with other communities, is we will then post those proposed boundaries of those neighborhoods online for a period of time to allow for public comment, questions, concerns. That is kind of the last big step to really understand the populations of students that will be really at our elementary schools. We kind of know who's going to be at our 5, 6, and our 7, 8 school right now, other than move-ins and move-outs, but our K-4 schools, we need a real strong understanding of, it sounds easy, but how many kindergartens are we going to need and where are they going to be? As you guys know, that is an important question to answer, so we want to get that right. Those are the big pieces that have gone on. Facilities is constantly evaluating. As you guys know, we had a facilities workshop yesterday, which is more about future stuff, but it's all tied together. Do you guys have questions about restructuring, anything going on, anything in the project plan? Thank you. Awesome. Thank you.
Jonathan, I do have one thing that I think I need to bring up. I think we missed a vote on the redistricting contract with Davis. I don't believe we voted on that, and it probably would be a good thing if someone from the facilities committee did that.
Okay, yeah, I thought we had voted on that. I guess, have we already started working with Davis Demographics?
Well, I guess since there's stakeholder meetings, we must be.
Okay, yeah, so, go ahead. Sure.
I can address that. So on the July 22nd meeting, we were presented with the contract as a group. We talked about it, we asked questions, and then we did not take a vote that night. But under our purchasing policy, it's not required to take a vote on those kind of things. When it's
Okay,
approved educational.
I don't agree with you, but.
But it's written, it's written in stone. I don't know what else, it's in
It's a
stone.
$20,000 contract. I think it should have been brought to the board to vote on.
It was brought to
But
the
if-
board.
We did not vote.
It was commented, and
Okay,
everyone had
If you
their.
don't want to vote, that's fine.
It's not that I don't want to, it's not required. I'll pass the I'll distribute the policy to everybody again.
Okay. Well,
It's,
we can save it for the next meeting then.
okay, fair enough.
I mean, I would say if a vote suffices, I don't know, I feel, again, I don't recollect exactly everything that we talk about and everything we vote, so, I mean, if a vote's now, I mean, I feel like we all had a pretty strong consensus. I don't know if it was unanimous, but if that solves the problem, I'm all.
I mean, I think the argument is, right, that we've, the restructuring plan has been voted through and that the redistricting is an expense associated with
Correct.
that plan. It's all interlocked. I mean, and I think if we want to take a vote, we can take a vote, but I think, David has a point.
I feel that this was not in the budget that we passed in March. It's something outside of the budget. Generally, when there's something that's outside of the budget, whether it's part of a plan, because the plan didn't have a dollar amount to it. We didn't vote on a dollar amount and what was going to go in, all the pieces that went into the plan. There was no dollar amount. And there still really isn't until we go through the budget process and we get the information about what it's going to cost, right? But all along, when we've had something else that goes along with the plan, from Gale Associates to La Valley to the enrollment study, we voted on all of those. So I think it just makes sense to vote on this as well.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Again, I think it was maybe I don't know, maybe, again, I thought.
An
maybe we had
oversight. I just
an
wanted to bring
Yeah,
it up.
exactly, an oversight. So I think if we can correct that tonight, and I don't think we can. do it
Anybody on the
for-
facility?
One second, hold on a second. So I got policy DJ in front of me. It's the purchasing policy. Now read you the last paragraph, because that's germane to the discussion that we're having right now. So the board assigns the business administrator the responsibility for the quality and quantity of purchases made under the supervision of the superintendent. The prime guideline governing the responsibility are the purchases fall within the framework of budgetary limitations, and that they be consistent with approved education goals. Now, I would argue that the 5, 6, 7, 8 model has been voted on and is an approved education goal. So that's what the policy reads. People have come to us in the public and said, you're not following policy. So when we do follow policy, we get in the other end. I think it's inconsistent, and I don't think it's accurate. I have no problem taking a vote with that being said, but this is what the policy reads. I believe I am interpreting it right spot on, and
We also have another policy that says we have a $5,000 limit for bids, so.
Why don't we just go ahead and take a vote on
I do
it?
agree with you, and I have made a list of all those policies that need to be reviewed by the policy committee, because they need to be updated. I don't think the $5,000 limit is fair anymore. It's an old number, and it isn't really a fair number. But while we have them in place, we need to follow them, and I don't agree with your assessment of that policy, because we're not buying something. We're entering into a contract, and it was not in the budget.
So, yeah, I don't want to belabor the point much further. Again, I agree I agree that, the administration has some I don't want to say latitude, is within the policy to move forward with these things. So, me individually, I'm fine with it. Again, I think maybe if we can put a motion to vote on it.
I
just
would
to
make a
kinda
motion to
make sure we can
approve
cross the
the-
Ts and dot the Is.
I would make a motion to approve the Davis Demographics redistricting agreement.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I think maybe we table this, I don't even think we can table this the next week, but if we're even able to do this, is that possible?
I don't know, maybe you'll have to wait and get a legal opinion, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so can we vote on this and then get the legal, legal process? Again, I'm with David, I don't think it really requires a vote either, so, I don't know. My suggestion, I guess, is I think we can move on, and we can review the policies, but I think we're within the policy. But you did put a motion out there, if anyone wants to second it. Not hearing a second, so the motion fails. So now that we've heard the point about that, we'll move on in the facilities conversation. So I know I was unable to make last night's facilities workshop, but I was able to catch up with David, and it sounded like, we were able to talk about, expectations for Lively Brensinger as we move forward in that. It sounded like there are some guidelines and specifics that, we're still waiting on. I think, figuring out, capacities, figuring out, how we are planning to, inform, and how we as a board are going to work together to try and get out the word as much as possible, and really put together, I guess, I don't want to say comprehensive, because I like it to be as easy to consume as possible, but some sort of communication plan that we're able to, point back to, that covers all of the history of the buildings, the costs, the amount of repairs that we need, and things like that. So I will pass it over to those that were here last night to kind of fill in the gaps of that summary that I have. But anything top of mind from a facility standpoint in addition to that meeting or workshop that we had yesterday?
Yeah, so we had 3 real agenda items. The first one you just kind of touched on is we had Jay from La Valley Brensinger there. He had pretty pointed questions for us on how to proceed. The biggest one that we'll discuss in our facilities meeting tomorrow is making sure we nail down the capacity to where we want it to be. So we'll do that, then we're meeting with Jay the following Friday to kind of hammer the final points home so him and his team can proceed and get going. They are behind the 8 ball right now because we have, a little bit of a delay. The second piece is, we talked about time commitments to the board, the administration, to really spend and educate and work with the community on our plan and get that out there and build trust and work with the community. So that, and one of the things we kind of said is each board member and administrator, we need to figure out what time commitments that we can allocate to that based on everyone's schedules, and we all figure out, and we'll figure out a way to work that in and make sure it works, and we'll figure that out as we get to that point. And the third piece was giving Jane some direction on the detail of the 25 whatever bond for repairs that comes up. I know we talked about 25 million, but we want to hash that out. We have a baseline already in place. We just have to amend that and edit it since it was done in December. So that's obviously 9 months ago. So we'll amend and update that. And as we mentioned in the meeting, we want one bite at the apple. Just want to get it right the first time. Make sure there's not as much detail as we needed. Make sure we capture everything that's needed. Obviously, we can't predict the future if major things come down the pike, but at least we can look at where we are today and all the reports and everything we've seen over the last year and a half. We have enough data points to give a good description by school what is needed, and if it's 25 million, great. If it's not, we'll assess that as we move on. But so that was really the direction for that piece for Jane, and as we move forward, we'll update progress on that. And I think those are the 3 biggest things that we worked through.
Anyone else want to comment on where facilities are? Or I guess not where facilities are, but the discussion on facilities in our long-term plan?
I think we need to continue to address the need, for a new school. I mean, we're talking about a staggering amount of deferred maintenance that's accumulated over decades at some of these buildings. By closing the Derry Village School, that took one of our most efficient buildings off the books. We can better utilize the buildings that we have, but we still need to tackle the deferred maintenance at all the other buildings. Now, I mean, if you look at this, at the South Range building, the cost that was estimated to renovate it, the cost estimated for repairs, and compare it to the cost of a new building, I mean, there needs to be a significant cost savings to go with renovations over a new build, and that's not the case with this building. I'm hoping that in our, further conversations with, LaValle Brunsinger, they will make that case as professional architects. And I mean, I think that's the way that we need to move forward. And I think it's important to say, too, that we're talking about building a building that would replace the South Range School. We're not talking about closing another school. It would be my hope that when we build a new school, it's not going to be another redistricting. The new school is going to be at or above the capacity at the South Range School, and the population of that school would move over to the new school. It would be the same administrators, it would be the same teachers, it would be the same peer groups of students, but they'd be in a new building in a new location. So I think it is important to keep saying that this is not closing a second school, this is replacing a deficient building.
A new 21st century school. I do wonder, though, just with the state of South Range, what are the plans there so that it's still, I mean, it's in pretty rough condition right now, that it's I know that we don't want to put any more money into it, but also, there's pretty extensive damage to that building, so how much longer are we going to keep kids in there before we start repairing it versus building a new school?
All emergency repairs will be done as they come up.
You're right. Yeah, you're right.
And we'll have to assess the situation as things come up, and we're notified of it. But that's kind of where we're at right now on that.
Austin or Joe, anything you guys want to add from a facility
I
standpoint?
will say regarding South Range, maintenance will be shoveling the roof off from here on out because of the information we got from Honeywell.
Anything else from anyone? Yeah, I think just my last words on facilities, it's just, again, for me, I focus on kind of the process and trying to have as much of a plan and being able to share that plan as best as possible. So I think, if we're able to kind of anchor back to, I guess the most important topics and the talking points and focusing on, where we are today, where we want to be, and how we're going to get there is going to be very important. So looking forward to the continuation of that plan and seeing, what is possible from a potential new school and definitely what type of repairs, renovations that we're going to be able to do across the district over kind of a long-term plan. So that's it from a facility standpoint. I will pass it over to Jane. Looks like we have adequacy aid that we received, and then also conversation regarding the unreserved fund balance.
If you want to just put that one slide at that one attachment. Okay, so there were two things that I was going to bring to the board tonight, one of which was the adequacy aid, which was the increase in the amount that Attorney Gordon Graham brought to you at the last board meeting with regards to the new formula and the increased and I guess what you could call unanticipated revenue, which was $690,230. Sorry. And also the unreserved fund balance. Now, today we have new information regarding special education aid that we just found out today how much more we think we're going to have. Typically, we don't know that until we get closer to tax rate setting time, and that's going to make a difference on my presentation. So I'm going to have Laura Powers talk to that, and then I'll continue with my presentation.
All right, we've completed the special education aid process for 2022-23 school year. And that payment will be coming in December. We had originally budgeted for $600,000 for revenue, and it is estimated that we're going to get $1.4 million back. So that's a huge increase. Other revenue from Medicaid is $417,000. And I'd just like to do a huge shout out to the staff, Sue Hebert, Vaughn Harding, Kathy Alasso, for all their hard work with that process. It is daunting. And they not only get to do it once, but then they get, it comes back from the state and they get to continue that process for about a month. So it's a lot of work. And so I appreciate all of that. And it also wouldn't be possible without the due diligence of the special ed facilitators, the special ed teachers, related service providers, paraprofessionals, transportation, assistant directors and coordinators. That is, they all contribute. It's about them being accurate. It's about having a lot of paperwork that has to be uploaded to the state. So I appreciate all their hard work in that, and it'll continue.
Now, the reason, since we just got that updated information, is typically when I am getting ready to do my revised revenue MS-24 report for the state, which is usually in October, which is the revised revenue. So we're looking at last October, what I projected that we would receive this year for revenues. I take a look at any updated numbers, any new anticipated funds, and then I revise them for tax rate setting. Now, in particular with special education aid, the state, when we talk about tax rate setting, and they reach out and they will give me a percentage of how much you can anticipate to receive of that full funding. Now, Laura is talking about $1.4 million. The actual allocation would be $1.7 million, and they're saying that we would receive 80%, which comes to the 1.4. However, you're never guaranteed what the state is going to give you. And so usually when we're going to tax rate setting, the state may say, the least amount you can budget or anticipate for that revenue could be 56% of your total allocation of the 1.7 million. So we're going to take a look at that. And so I probably want to hold off on the retained fund vote for tonight because if you look at that chart, if you're scrolling on down a couple lines where it says unreserved funds, the 4.7 million, that's what we have right now unaudited for the end of June 30 of 2023 that we're saying was unreserved funds. Of that, we had a warrant article asking voters to start a capital reserve account for 1.8 million for roof repairs from the unreserved fund account of what you didn't spend in the 22-23 school year. So you would take I know there's a lot of numbers on here and really none of them are gonna really matter to right now except for those two lines, the 4.7, and then you're going to reduce it by the 1.8, which leaves you with 2.986. Remember when we did our estimating of the tax impact last year, we anticipated that we would have around $3 million unreserved at the end of June 30th to offset taxes in our next fiscal year, which would be for this coming year. Now, the reason why we may want to hold off the vote is because although we've voted that we can retain up to 5% of our district assessment, which would be way more than we have of a balance right now, so you have 2.8 million that you could either retain or that you could return to offset taxes. If you were to not return any of it, your tax impact from what we estimated obviously is going to be a bit higher. So anticipating that we have what we need to vote on tonight would be that $690,000 for the unanticipated adequacy. That we do need to vote on tonight. I did ask Austin in August if we would write a letter to the commissioner to get an extension on our DOE 25, and he did that for me. We did get the 30-day extension, so the DOE 25, which has all our financial information from 22-23, and does have on there what your retained funds and your unreserved funds are going to be. I think I'm recommending, since we just had that new information tonight about the additional special aid funds, so we may want to vote on the unreserved fund at is it the 26th, the last meeting of the month? And then the DOE 25 is done. Bill completed that with the exception of those two lines. And I can submit it to the state the following day. And the reason why I think that we may want to hold off is because if you're looking at that 4.7 and you've only got 2.9 to sort of make a decision on, that additional revenue that we're looking at when we're going through tax rate setting is going to be, you're using that to reduce your taxes at the end of the following year. And we also know that we budgeted very little for interest, and last month alone, we received over $13,000 in interest. So I know that I'm going to revise my interest revenues. We're probably going to increase Medicaid a little bit, and now we have the special ed aid. And if you were to vote tonight on the adequacy, the $690,000, and using that as to go towards your unreserved fund balance, which is at the end of 2024. So that $690,000 does not affect the unreserved fund balance that you'd be voting on tonight or the 26th, I would recommend. So I think that the numbers, because they're changing, will matter, and I will change my presentation so that you can make a better informed decision. It's not necessarily it's gonna change how you're gonna vote on how much you're gonna retain, because you're gonna look at how much more revenue you're taking in for next year, or this current fiscal year. I know that we're looking at 2 years, so it gets a little confusing, but I think that the vote for the adequacy should be done tonight, because you won't have a lot of time after the 26th if you're choosing to spend the 690, because you're going to have that special meeting, and that's just a much longer timeline. But if you're looking to put it towards unreserved fund balance at the end of June of 2024, then you could make a motion and a vote tonight to not spend that money.
Thank you, Jane.
Sorry if that was super confusing, but getting an additional, almost $1 million extra that we know we're going to get, or we think we're going to have. And I probably am not going to fully estimate the 1.4, because it's at 80%. You never know if the state's really going to give you that, so I probably will go a little bit lower, but that's significant enough that you should probably hold that vote off until next board meeting.
Okay. I think, yeah, that all makes sense to me. If other board members have a preference, please speak up. But regarding the adequate aid return, or the adjustment in the formula, which is bringing, or has the potential to bring us $690,230, there's really 3 options that we can do with that, right? One is to return it all to the taxpayers, and we could make that vote on it tonight, and it would all be returned. The second and third options really would require a special meeting of whether we retain all of that, a special hearing, that we retain all or some of that. Is that accurate?
Yes, that was a good summary. Thank you, Jonathan.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, if open up the discussion, or you can certainly make a motion. If someone feels strongly about voting on the the retained funds and the unreserved amount, as well as what to do with the adequate aid returned to taxpayers. So, anyone have any strong feelings or initial thoughts? Steven?
Quick question, Jane. So when you add the whatever 1.2, 1.4, whatever you decide that number is, the numbers in option 1, 2, 3, and 4 will shrink, correct? And the final net change in estimated tax rate?
Yeah, this whole chart will be revised. So what you're really going to be looking at is nothing's going to change about the 2.9 million, even though that's unaudited. That's really what your focus is, and the only amount that you're going to be able to, of 2.9, how much of that do you want to return to taxpayers? How much of that do you want to retain, if any? But I think recalculating the chart with the increased revenue, it may make your decision. You may want to choose to retain more because you'll have more revenues at the end of this coming fiscal year. And that's where I think I can probably give you a better presentation and hold off on that. But if you could vote on adequacy, that might be helpful.
Okay, and sorry, 2 other questions. The extension that we got is for the DOE 25 is until when?
My 30-day expires on September 30th.
Okay, perfect.
So I would plug in those 2 numbers on the 27th.
Okay, perfect. And then if we were to have a special meeting or special hearing, we would probably need to have that at the 26th meeting in order to hit the deadlines, correct? If we decided not to return all of the adequacy aid money?
Yeah, you'd want to have that pretty quickly because before tax rate setting time, which is typically end of October.
Perfect. Okay. I think logistically is everyone comfortable with the details for all of these things? Okay. All right. Any other questions, comments? All right. So I agree with Jane. I think we should make a decision on the adequate aid. I guess I always ask this question, but what would be, obviously, Jane, your recommendation, or Austin, if you have a strong recommendation for the adequacy aid, I will. Before you answer it, I'll give my stance on it, and I don't know, maybe people from the board, but I know in conversations I've had, and looking at even with these numbers, you know, I'm going to round it up to $700,000. You know, there is I think that's a small impact on our budget. I think it is also a small impact, or a small impact on, you know, households. However, it is still an impact, and the thought that was brought to me is, you know, this is not money that we had budgeted for. I know the funding formula had changed, and so maybe it would make sense to return it. Also, regarding, you know, the logistics around a special hearing and what will be involved in that, and then what we would do with that money. You know, again, we asked taxpayers for the $1.8 million, and then we took money out to do the funding to start on the roofs and start doing capital maintenance and repairs and things like that. So my initial gut reaction is to return all of that back to the taxpayers, and then I guess it is kind of a nice thing that, you know, we're getting this additional special education that will hopefully help bridge the gap between the 2.98 million that we have in the retained funds, where, you know, we'd bookmarked $3 million. So that's my thoughts. I don't know if anyone else on the board has any else.
I'll make a motion to move that, to return the 690, 230 to the taxpayers.
Okay, we have a motion from
Second.
Brenda. Second, to return all of the adequacy aid revenue that we received back to the taxpayers. A second by Jason. I will open up further discussion to the board.
I think you did have a question in there of what the
Yes.
administration's thoughts were, so.
My recommendation is to do that, to return it. And for clarification, that does not impact, we're not returning it at this tax rate setting, okay? It'll be returned at the next tax rate setting because it's for fiscal 23-24, returning to affect the tax rate in 24-25. And I agree with your motion, Brenda.
Thank you, Jane. All right, I will sorry, did you have something? Oh, all right, it feels like we have a consensus, so I'm not gonna do a roll call. All in favor of Brenda's motion to return all of the adequacy aid to the taxpayers of $690,230? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Jean. We will keep it, and just one other thing. Obviously, be prepared to vote on the retained funds next meeting, but we'll stick with Jane with the business administrator's update.
Okay, sorry, we had an additional attachment in there for the financials. This update is we did it as of the 7th. Liz actually did a check run today, and payroll also ran on Friday, so our most up-to-date financials would not be included in here, so they'll be included in the next update. But this is as of the 7th. Just want to give you an update that we did have our pre-audit on August 9th and 10th. Our full audit will take place between October 2nd and 6th. The audit will be reviewing all of last year's financials for our general fund, food service, federal, and student activities, combined revenues and expenditures over $98 million. We also will have a single audit, which is for any of our federal projects that receive more than $700,000 in revenues, and so that would include our food service program, the majority of our title programs, IDEA, ESSER, all of those will be audited. We don't have a date for those yet. I did apply for more safety grants. we're eligible to receive up to $100,000 per school, and I applied for not quite that per school, but a lot, and we're waiting to hear back if we've been awarded any of those. SR2's been fully allocated. That does close at the end of the month, the end of September. We have started our budget preparation, and we will be presenting in October. We are now on our second payroll of a full conversion onto electronic timesheets. It's been a lot of work, and I want to thank everybody in our finance department, especially Mary Webster and Mary Ellen Tagliatella. They've done an amazing amount of work to try to do that conversion, and we are all still in training, and 5 of us will be certified payroll experts in frontline, I guess you could call it. And at the end of June 30th, when we go into our next fiscal year, all the rest of our hourly wage earners will be on our electronic timesheet. So we appreciate all of our assistants' patience by going through this process. Facilities, we try to put in some of them are before and afters, but some of them are just the afters. But East Derry, they did a lot of work out there. They did have flooring crews out there removing carpet and replacing with VCT. They did have their septic system pumped. Also, the front entrance, the grids when you walk in, those did fail, and right now we have a temporary solution in there, and the grids are actually on order. And that project to fully replace it is about $25,000. Gilbert H. Hood, you can see in the picture, all of those lights were replaced, and that was our very own maintenance department that did the entire gym. If you remember, we did have a fire in there last year, but all of them got replaced, and big thanks to them for doing that. One of these pictures on here, you can see Gilbert H. Hood with our new sidewalk. Hard to believe we never had one there, but it looks like it should have always been there, and they did an outstanding job on that, and I think that Principal Carpentino is very happy having it there so her students can safely walk to and from buses and cars. And you can see this is also at Gilbert H. Hood. This is one of the hallways where they did have to do an asbestos abatement, and you can see after the floor that was put in is beautiful. It's just such a difference in having the old carpeting in there. And we look at Grinnell, as you know, a lot of our older schools, they have to have asbestos abatements done in them. It is very costly, so we only do replacement of flooring in the schools that do need abatements. We only do several of them a year just because of the increased costs for the abatement. And you can also see at Grinnell, we did complete that water main project that we worked closely with the town on, Mark LaRue and the rest of his crew, and Jeremy and Rob on our end. The plumbing has all been put in, and that's all been updated. South Range continues to have work over there. They are working with Honeywell to replace their main water heater. There were some areas of the roof at South Range that did fail, and they are working on replacing those. They did have roof drains that were cleared. Interestingly enough, when they had to cut the lines out of there, there were 3 tennis balls and 2 Gatorade bottles in there. And that was from many, many years ago, because when Jeremy came here, he actually put grids on top of the openings of those pipes so that nothing actually could get down there. So they were pretty old, and those were all removed, and now we have full drainage from the roof, and we do continue to work on I think it was Austin said, any emergencies or projects that are at South Range. West Running Brook, we did have 2 of the labs that were reconfigured. We replaced those with regular student desks. And the library, you can just see one of the photos of what the floor looked like as they removed the carpet. That carpeting had a lot of rippling in it, which when we are looking at what carpets to replace, we look at safety tripping hazards. And West Running Brook Library definitely had that. And you can see the new carpet. They're actually individual squares, so if one of them gets stained and beyond being able to remove a stain, Jeremy and their crew can go in there and take a square out and replace a square. And the custodial crew took it upon themselves to do painting on those columns and make the library look very fresh and brand new looking, and they actually, I think the librarian's gone in there and moved around a lot of the bookshelves and everything to make it a more open concept, more similar to how Gilbert H. Hood Library looks. And these are just some of the things that they've been doing all summer. They have their hair inspections, backflow inspections. All of their gym equipment and their bleacher inspections were done. The fire extinguisher inspections, kitchen hood inspections, sprinkler inspections. All the grease traps have been cleaned, and all of the elementary school playgrounds were assessed. Our maintenance crew does that as well. And we did have the playground chips blown in. You can't use regular mulch. It has to be a certain type of chip. Just the playground chips to be blown into our playgrounds was $18,000. He did get multiple bids on that. And as you might have heard when we talked in facilities yesterday, and you got an email, the fire panel went over the weekend at Barca. That had to be replaced, so they're working on that. That again was an $18,000 job that's getting replaced. That is something that is mandatory. We have to have it. So there was a lot of activity over at the schools this weekend with some of the maintenance issues, and props to the maintenance department for their swift attention to all of it. Lastly, on my report, I just want to update you on food service. We sent home paper applications for free and reduced to all of our families. And we also have online portal where you can apply for free and reduced. I have approved a lot of free and reduced applications, and I always say I'm happy but not happy. I'm happy to say for the district that we're getting a lot of people who qualify for free and reduced, but at the same time, you know, it doesn't make you feel good that our families are in that type of a financial situation that that they're not earning enough with the number of people who are in their household. But what I can say is we really appreciate the families who are applying. It matters financially to the district, and it matters for them so that their children can either have a reduced priced meal, which I believe is like 40 cents, or a free meal. And we continue to encourage families, if their financial situation changes, if you have additional family members move into your household, because it is calculated on the number of family members in your house, please fill out those applications. Thanks to Christina Lebelzik, who's working really hard and working with our social workers to make sure that we're reaching out to all families to get them with their appropriate identification of free, reduced. And there is still about $23,000 in outstanding debt for food service. Quite a few that I see coming across are families who now qualify for free, so we'll need to work with those families on that. But overall, we're very happy with the food service program so far at the beginning of the school year, and continue to ask families if they need help filling out the application. Christina would be happy to help them, and they are confidential. Myself and Christina are the only ones who see them. Does anybody have any questions on any of that?
Jane, were the carpets, thank you, were the carpets that were placed at East Derry, were those in classrooms where they could also move the cubbies that are still remaining in the middle of the rooms?
Those rooms with the cubbies, they are on our list of things to do, but I don't believe they moved any of the cubbies this summer, but Jeremy is aware of it, and that is on his list of things to do too. And we know it makes a big difference in those classrooms to have that open space, so.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, we haven't forgotten about those.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jane. Any questions or comments for Jane regarding her update?
Thank you.
Oh, Jane, were you planning on going over, also, there was the general fund budget to actuals by object code for this year?
As of September 7th?
Yes. Is there anything?
Sure, I can just go over it quickly. We have our revenues on there that you can see of what we've done year to date. There isn't much activity in revenues over the summer, so you're not going to see much on there. And on our expenditures, you can see at this point where we are on salaries, benefits. As you know, we still have quite a few unfilled positions, so of course you're going to see some unencumbered funds for salaries, which again follow along with the appropriate benefits. Right now, you may see some things overspent, like contracted services. However, Laura is working with Sue Hebert on rewriting her grants to try to transfer some of those in there to her IDEA federal grants. And I don't have the enrollment yet for Pinkerton. I just plugged in what the actual budget was. I won't know. I'll do my estimate when I get my September 1 enrollment numbers, and I'll get my first Pinkerton invoice in October. And then I'll present that to the board so we can see where we are for Pinkerton Academy. And we've started encumbering our utilities. It does show anticipated overexpending, but I think that we also had a reduction in our rate when we renegotiated, so I don't anticipate to be overspent on utilities this year. And Mike Fowler actually just sent me an email the other day about working on a new contract. And then you can just see them we added them by function code, which again is sort of by department, and you can see where the overall is. But this is really early into the fiscal year to sort of gauge it, but that's where we are right now.
Where did we miss some budget for next? What was the driving factor there?
Do you mean of why it's over?
Yeah, it's over $211,000.
Right, so kids who have chosen to attend next as opposed to Pinkerton. But again, those are just initial numbers. I don't have their first enrollment. We just plugged in what we thought as of the end of.
No,
So
I
it'll
hear you on
change.
that, but they only have like 80 students, right? So we couldn't miss on enrollment, I wouldn't think, in the budget. It has to be something larger than that.
Well, it's also the special education costs for next charter school. We used to provide the costs kind of came out of our budget, but now next charter school bills us for special education, and that's a contributing factor to that. Yep.
Thank you, Jane. Anything else for Jane before we move on to Austin? No? All right. Thanks, Jane. Austin, the floor is yours.
Okay, we have personnel. I have a couple of resignations. Cheyenne Rancourt, former science teacher at Gilbert H. Hood Middle School, and district accountant, Bill Roy, who I want to give a congratulation to. He's going to be one of the youngest business administrators in the state of New Hampshire. He went back and got his degree and is moving on to do the Jane Samad job in another district, and I just hope you will accept those resignations with regret.
Motion to approve with regret.
So we have a motion to approve the two resignations by Kearney. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Brenda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
And we have three hires since the last meeting. John Coda, Project Me special education teacher at West Runningbrook Middle School. Stephanie Gillespie, 8th grade science teacher, Gilbert H. Hood Middle School. Catherine Linton, special education reading specialist, Derry Village Elementary School.
Do I hear a motion to accept the nominations?
Move to approve as presented.
First from Brenda, second by Kearney. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 6-0.
Welcome to the district.
Yep. All right, Austin, I believe we have a donation as well.
Yes, we do. The Walls family has made a donation of a 6-year-old Hoyer lift to the district. The estimated value of the new lift is $2,500. A Hoyer lift is used for someone who has mobility issues, possibly to remove them from a wheelchair or whatever. And I'm hoping you will accept that donation from the Walls family.
Move to accept the donation of $2,500 for a 6-year-old Hoyer lifts. Thank you very much. Appreciated.
First by Jason, second by, I think that was Brenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Yes, that's very thoughtful, and we really appreciate that. Austin, we're sticking with you. I believe you have some
Children's,
for Children's Dental Network.
yep. I forgot I had a separate item on this, so it's in my superintendent's report, so I'm gonna go to that and read it off here. The Greater Derry Oral Health Collaborative Corporation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. They run the Children's Dental Network, which for the past 30 years has provided free dental care for our Derry students in need. During the 22-23 school year, the Children's Dental Network gave preventive dental services in the fall and spring to Derry children without access to dental care. The overall total clinical value of their service was an approximate value of $86,000. In addition to visiting all our public elementary and middle schools, their service included visits to Next Charter School, Head Start, and to the Derry Early Education Program. They visited the Upper Room last summer to share education, resources, and many dental supplies, and local dentists provided dental services of donated care for Derry students with an additional value of almost $5,000. My request to the school board tonight is to vote once again, as you did last year, to give a total donation of $10,000 to the Greater Derry Oral Health Collaborative Corporation and their Child's Dental Network.
Just a little background. As we talked last year, we used to offer office space to this organization years back, up until last year, I think. So when we voted for this last year, this was to kind of reimburse them, donate $10,000 to them in lieu of the office space we used to provide. So there's some background for you guys who are new to the board.
Anyone have questions for Austin regarding the Children's Dental Network and the donation he's requesting? No? I would entertain a motion to approve the $10,000 donation.
Move to approve the $10,000 donation to the Greater Derry Oral Health Collaborative Corporation.
I'd second that.
We have a first by Jason, second by Kearney. Group vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Brenda, motion passes 5-1.
Jonathan, can I say something?
Go ahead.
It is absolutely not that I'm opposed to their program or the good work that they do. I just think that there are a lot of other organizations that benefit our students, including our lunch program that's running in the red right now, and that don't ask for donations. So I feel it's not appropriate for us to do. And that's my reason.
All right, Austin, we will stick with you for the superintendent's update.
Okay, I want to begin by thanking our Director of Student Services, Laura Powers, and all of our Student Services staff who helped to make the almost $1.5 million possible that Jane and Laura discussed 10 or 15 minutes ago. It is often mentioned that the special education department has added expenses, which they do, but this is usually caused by things like out-of-district placements, the need for contract services because we can't find staff that we can hire, and students that may move in after the budget is already been approved and so forth, and they come with some expensive needs. And I did it again. There we go. Laura and her staff have spent a great deal of time and effort working to offset these expenses by bringing in monies like this $1.5 million, and I just want to make sure that I thank them publicly for this effort. Staying with special education for a moment, I want everyone to be aware of some sad news regarding a former special education employee who retired in 2017. Eileen Marden recently lost her battle with cancer. She was an excellent employee and a wonderful person who always cared deeply for her students. Our heartfelt condolences go out to her family and friends, Please observe a moment of silence in her honor. Thank you very much. Moving on to our quest to secure employees for all of our current open positions, Kathy Kennedy, Director of Human Resources, provided me with a list that I will read now. And although we still have openings, I am very happy to see that this list has shortened up quite a bit. Every one of our schools is looking for special education assistants. And the majority of our schools are looking for a school-based substitute, which pays $115 a day. We are in need of 2 school secretaries, which is usually a very popular position in the school district, but we are finding it difficult to fill these 2 positions. One is at our Derry Early Education Program, and one is at Ernest P. Barker Elementary School. Gilbert H. Hood, we are still in need of an 8th grade special ed teacher, and I want to thank the special ed teachers that are there now who are filling in while we look to secure another hire in that. West Runningbrook wants to reach out. They are in need of both boys and girls basketball coaches, so you can contact them about that. District vacancies, I mentioned our district accountant. We are going to be looking for a finance manager to replace Bill Roy. We have a part-time 24 hours a week attendance officer. ESOL teacher, English for speakers of other languages. The New England Center for Children, we are in need of instructional tutors, a school psychologist, speech language pathologists, and a school district treasurer, deputy treasurer as well. Along with our school-based substitutes, we have on-call day-to-day substitute teachers, which pays $105 a day, on-call day-to-day substitute nurses, which pays $205 a day, custodians, food service workers, child nutrition, cooks and servers as well, part-time human resource assistant, and on-call day-to-day substitute teacher assistants at $75 a day, and an on-call day-to-day substitute secretaries at $11 an hour. I know that is too low, and that's one of the problems we have with filling these positions. But please reach out to our Human Resources Department, Kathy Kennedy, as well as her administrative assistant, Mary Ellen Tagliatella. You can email them at the SAU, or you can call 432-1210. If you are available to work here in the Derry Cooperative School District, which is a great place to work, learn, connect, and grow. I thank you in advance for that. And finally, it was a great opening of school for our students, families, and staff. I visited all 9 schools in the first 2 weeks, and I've begun my second round of visits already. Our staff and students braved the July heat that we didn't get in July, but decided to show up last week. There was a bit of heat and humidity, but they handled it with positive attitudes, both our teachers and our students. I was out there in those buildings, sweating along with everybody else, as was Mr. Crawford, and our curriculum people as well. Teachers were still teaching with professionalism and care, and students were still learning in spite of that heat. And we're so happy to say that has calmed down a bit, and I hope Hurricane Lee keeps moving east as much as possible away from our shores, so we won't get hit by that this weekend. I want to thank everyone for their patience, their persistence, and their perseverance, and I look forward to seeing everyone soon in their school and in their classroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin. Anyone have comments, questions for Austin?
I just want to reiterate, thank you to the special ed team and the what you've accomplished in regards to the increased revenue, and that's awesome, and it's definitely a great thing and something that's badly needed, clearly. The only caution I have is, and we can address this during budget in another month or so, is I still want to see how we missed last year's budget by so much on the out-of-district placements. And like I said before, if it truly is unanticipated, students coming in, that's fine. But I just really want to see that in an Excel format for our budget meeting, and then I will be satisfied with that. But definitely, overall, thank you, and we definitely appreciate it, the hard work that it goes into billing Medicaid. I work in a nursing home, so I know what it's like to bill Medicaid, so I definitely appreciate that, and obviously, and the other reason why I caution, it's anything when it comes to state funding, it's good one year, then who knows what could happen next, and that's not a knock on anything, it's just reality that we face these days. So I definitely, it helps us this year, obviously, which is great, but when we come to our budget, we really need to figure out how we missed the out of district, excuse me, and that'd be helpful. That's helpful information when we come to the budgets next month. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. We will move on to FYIs. Does anyone from the board have an FYI? I'll take that as a no. We'll move on to the committees portion with manifest, starting in the leadoff position.
Do we need to go over the budget meetings, the schedule?
Oh, sorry, yes. We do have an updated schedule for budget meetings with the first, so we'll backtrack. We have first budget discussion, which will be happening September 19th, and then through October, November, and December, we'll have our budget review sessions, and then in January, we are planning to have the public hearing, the February deliberative session, and then March voting. Check out the attachments for an updated list of those. Those will, the majority of them, be held at West Running Brook Middle School in the cafeteria like we have in years past, except for the public hearing, which will be held here during a regular board meeting, or in addition to a regular board meeting, and then the deliberative, and the deliberative session will be in the gymnasium at West Running Brook as well. Budget meetings? Nope. All right. Next on the list. Yes, now we move to committees.
All right, I move to approve the manifest in the amount of $1,750,734.15. Of that, we have general payroll in $1,124,717.04, and we have general expenses of $626,017.11.
First by David.
Second.
Second by Kearney. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 6-0. Are there any other committee reports? I feel like we have, no. Okay, perfect. We will now reopen our delegates and individuals for another 15 minutes, should we need it. Again, a reminder, the residents, come on up. When you get to the podium, please state your name and your address. You've got 3 minutes. Address the entire board, no one individually. And yeah, come on up if you are so inclined.
Good evening. Oops. Good evening. Can you? Good evening. Richard Tripp, 44 Wyndham Road. Tonight, during the discussion on the facilities, one of the things that keeps coming up is you talk about repairs to the schools and renovations to the schools. Now, I believe these are two different topics. Because the, see, like the repairs to the schools, I believe it is like $5 million per school or whatever, just to do like the envelope and the roofs and things like that. And I think the 25 million that you guys are hoping to bond is for that purpose. Now, there has been some discussion previously about school renovations. Now, there was some numbers bandied about there that were, I believe, in the 30 million per school range. You know, the facilities plan, is it safe to say that right now, since you're looking for like a 75 million bond for a new building and 25 million bond for repairs, that the renovation thoughts have been placed on the table? You know, I know that you're up against a hard deadline on when things can be done. So it's one of these things that I think that it would help for the public to understand, you know, where it is that you're going and what you're going to be doing, you know. Because if you're going to be asking for you know, bonds at this amount, you know, they should have some, you know, confidence that if they do approve this, that this is it for a while, because, you know, the country's not in a good state. You know, the economy's bad. People are you know, as Jane said, there's a lot of people on free and reduced meals. You know, I think you need, to communicate. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I would prefer to do this at the end, just to make sure the public has their full 15 minutes, and then we have an opportunity to respond at the end of that. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
Jeff LaJoy, 12 Meadowbrook Road. Just seeing if I'm gonna get doxxed. So thank you guys for all participating. I see you guys have a lot going on. I know what kind of environment you're dealing with right now and making big decisions. It's gonna be tough road out. I do have a lot of questions. One of my big questions is, you know, we keep talking about closing South Range, right? And a lot of people are really, in our town, are really kind of upset as to how things are going. Right now, we've closed Derry Village. Do we have a repair number on what it would cost to repair Derry Village? Anybody?
So Jeff, we'll, I would ask your questions because we know you're short on time, but
Yep, no
then
problem.
we'll try and answer them and address them after.
All right, so I'm trying to see if a repair to Derry Village would outweigh the cost of a new school. That's one of my big questions. I'd really like to know what we're looking at. Plus, you guys have, is it 4 other schools that need major repairs? This isn't gonna be cheap. Plus, we have a fire department going in. They're proposing a fire department. You guys can't even get teachers for the wages, so you're gonna be looking for a bigger increase there. I mean, we're talking about a lot of money, and just like you guys right now, we're living paycheck to paycheck. It's not easy, you know? It really isn't. I know a lot of people that are gonna be losing their house. I see 3 houses on my street going up for sale. So they're selling top of the market, trying to get out now to save face. And then they're gonna go spend the same amount plus have a higher interest rate. than we had before. I mean, we're in a tough spot. I can't even refinance, or I'd be stupid to refinance right now, let's put it that way. I don't have to, but I'd like to do additions to my house, right? Now is not the time. I gotta wait. I'm gonna have to wait until this all settles out, right? I think you guys are gonna have to wait too. What are you gonna do if we don't approve the school? What are you gonna do at South Range? You're just not gonna repair it? You're gonna have to. So my suggestion, and you can take it however you'd like, is get all envelopes back to watertight, back to code, or up to code, and then go from there. I mean, I know I said this the last meeting, but you guys are probably gonna have to kick the can down the road again. It's not the right time. It just is not. Oh, yellow light. That's all I got. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Anyone else that would like to address the board? All right, seeing nobody, we can close the delegations and individuals portion of, yep. So now that we're done with delegates and individuals, I would certainly open it up to the board to respond to any of the public comment that we received tonight. And so anyone that wants to start, I know, David, you go ahead.
So Richard, I'll address your question regarding renovations versus repairs. So at our last, I think it was our last board meeting and a workshop prior to that, the facilities committee came up with 4 options that we would go down, what route we would go down. Renovations was option 3, and that did not get approved that night. The direction that was approved that night was option 1, which was 2 separate bonds, one for repairs, which is the number you articulated is right around. We'll finalize that number, but that's where it will probably be right around. And the second one is a new school, and that's what was approved 4-3 that night for a direction. So renovations, as of today, are not in the mix. Those 2 options that we discussed on our last board meeting is what got approved. Just give you a heads up on that.
All right, anyone else that would like to address public comments?
The one thing I'll say is we certainly didn't end up in this position overnight. There's been neglect by previous boards, previous administrations for decades. We are in a situation where the buildings, the school system itself, the district, right? So buildings or new requires a significant investment. And I'm with you, Jeff. I hear you. We're all feeling the pinch. There's not another alternative, right? Because just what you said, the number just to do envelopes, you're still talking a significant amount of money. So it's not, we're going to have to go to the taxpayers, right? Whether it's general fund, whether it's bonded out, the buildings either need to be, I said at the last meeting, it's $100 million plus to renovate the buildings we have, or it's $100 million probably plus to build a new building and repair what we have, right? We are in a situation where the buildings and the systems, a lot of them are well past their useful life, right? We've heard Honeywell talk about it. We've heard all the experts talk about it. And we've reached critical mass, right? I think we can all agree. And we're at a point now where this board is tasked and this administration is tasked with making tough decisions and finding a way. And we obviously need everybody's help, right? We need input and we need to have these discussions, but we have to find a way to make improvements because the kids deserve better, the teachers in the buildings deserve better. I said it last night at the workshop. The classrooms don't have enough, I mean, simple things, outlets. The bathrooms some of them are not ADA compliant. It's so dated, right? So I would urge everybody, and Jeremy's probably gonna hate me, but I would urge everybody who is really concerned and really invested in this to reach out to the administration and visit the schools, okay? I've been on the board now 6 months. I visited all the schools several times. When you see the buildings, then you will realize the situation we're in. This is not a board up here who wants to build a shiny new super mega school because we want to build a school. That's not the case. When I woke up this morning, I would prefer if our buildings were in better shape and we could talk about curriculum and we could talk about students' well-being and social emotional learning and extracurricular activities. All we do is eat, sleep, and breathe facilities. I can assure you, all of us, we're not, maybe not Brenda, right? But again, previous boards, decades, 20, 30 years of inactivity and neglect of these buildings put us here today. Previous administrations, previous boards did nothing. And we are here today dealing with this problem.
That is false.
Is it?
Yes, it is
Brenda,
false.
the last time we had a capital repair or capital improvement in this building, in this school district,
Don't say nobody did anything.
tell me what you guys did in previous boards, Brenda.
First of all, just wait
Hey,
and
guys, can we
I'm
please
done.
have some, we need to have some we need to have some decorum when,
You like to jump in with these things. Tell us what has been done.
It's not been neglect. Boards have tried, administrators have tried. There's other things that have happened, and as you saw this week, things happen that have to be done. So that was, things take priority over other things. I don't need to say anymore.
so guys, we do need.
My apologies.
Yeah, we're starting a trend here, last couple meetings, or last maybe 2 out of 3. Let's act with some civility towards each other, as well. I think it goes a long way, because, yeah, I think we certainly all are in the same boat that, we feel the angst, we feel, some sort of way, and, none of us are envious of each other or envious of the administration or envious of, the taxpayers that are going to have to feel the burden, of whatever the decisions are that we make, right? None of us feel great about what's transpired or what's currently transpiring or what may transpire down the road. We're trying to make what we think is balancing a really good fiscal decision with educating thousands of students in our district, and there's tens of thousands of people in this town, and yeah, there's a whole spectrum of people in our community that are, some are suffering in a lot of different ways, and we're trying to balance that. And I think, some of the frustrations do mount up, but, we can't go backwards and go back and fix any of these things or make any different decisions. We have been dealt this hand, and, I think the best thing is to try to move forward through that and try to make the best decisions that we can, again, balancing financially and educational decisions as well. But just from my standpoint, a couple of things that we heard from, I think, Jeff and Richard is, it's not going to be cheap. I think Jeff had asked, have we looked at, what it is the cost to repair versus build new? And that's one of the things I feel confident in, is that we have all the information. We've studied the heck out of it over really the last 10 years. And now I think what we're trying to do as a board is try to put words into actions, and try to make a difference and provide, an education that is what our students deserve, and what our community can afford. And it's going to be tough. And I think we've all said this before, that a lot of us are uncertain of whether this will get passed. And I think for me, the only way it's going to get passed is to have tough conversations about this, but also to make sure that we have a as close to a foolproof plan as possible, right? And so I look to these guys over here on my right, and it's on their shoulders. The pressure is on. I'm not one to sugarcoat that, and pressure's on from the people on this board that support the decision that we made to move forward with this and execute on that, and it's also coming from the people that weren't in favor of this, right? You know, we have to prove to everybody that we have the right plan in place that we can execute on. And yeah, there's a cost that's associated to that, and hopefully we find that right balance. But that remains to be seen.
Do we have an idea of when we're going to start getting messaging out to folks on what our plan is? When will we have tangible information about, because I know we're trying to act as much as we're trying to plan, but I do think it is an important step to provide that step by step. We get something done, we provide information in the most accessible way possible so that the community can stay up to date.
Yeah,
Without
so-
maybe watching a 2-hour school board meeting.
Sure. So I'll try and answer some of this, and anyone else can certainly chime in, as well as the administration. But I mean, I think this project plan, right, that we have, that the administration put together, is the beginnings of that. It was talked about Davis demographics. We're going to have the information posted on the website to garner the feedback, and we're also meeting with parent representatives from each of the schools, administrators, and so that's the beginnings of that. But yeah, again, I think it's important, and I've probably beat a dead horse. This is that we have all of this information as early as possible, and we're able to reference this as often as possible, so that come March, when these warrant articles are placed on the ballot, when you as a resident are going in to make the decision, that you feel like you have all the information that you need and you're confident in your decision. And of course, yeah, I hope that you feel confident enough to say, hey, you know, this is again a plan that makes sense, and is affordable, and that doesn't mean it's not going to cost money, and it's not going to probably hurt from a financial standpoint. But again, I think we can find that balance. And so some of these dates on here, I think we're on track. I think, you know, love to see an updated project plan, and see, you know, some of the things that we are on pace for. I wouldn't be
Does that
surprised if
look
things
like
have fallen back a little
one-pagers?
bit. But, you know, I also know that maybe that was part of the conversation yesterday, as far as informing the public. And that's part of, you know, what, you know, having Lavely Brensinger, they've talked about, I think, a website where we can do
Short
this.
videos,
And so I think, you know, I even sent my feedback to David about the Monadnock regional schools and their website, where we can point people to every single time someone asks a question. It has, you know, they even put plain English warrant articles along with the actual verbiage that will be on the ballot, and talking about, hey, you know, here is the cost for, you know, this school, and the repairs, just the repairs that we need, or here's the renovations that we need. And so, yeah, we need a comprehensive, again, plan, but also ability to inform the public of what they have. And so, again, have we got there yet? No. I think, you know, between now and the end of this year, I think we're going to have a lot of those, and the dominoes are going to start falling. So I think it's a question that I think we got to continue to ask, and we have to continue to push for those answers as well.
And also just highlight to the community that that is coming, and that we do respect that level of, we need to know what's going on equally as much. Like, we're in committee meetings, we're talking on the phone with each other, we're having discussions around this, but they aren't. So we equally have to provide that information on what's happening, why we're doing what we're doing. And I do think that that is a really, really vital step in this process that I don't want to see get overlooked. If that's one-pagers, if that's short videos, if as accessible as we can make it for people to, in a way that they can understand it, because some of this stuff is dense. Like, explain it like they're a 5-year-old. Like, literally, just like explain it as simple as we can, as well as other ones that are more in-depth, as well as, like, we have to have a multifaceted approach to our communication style. It's not just, oh, I'm going to throw up this PDF onto a website and hope to God that the community goes and gets it. It's actively pursuing what we're doing and making sure that we get the information out.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so to kind of hopefully put this to bed, I think we're going to rely on the administration a lot, but as David said last night, it will be incumbent upon us as board members as well, that, you know, we need to do our fair share of heavy lifting as possible, and be open and accessible, and, you know, put in the work to make sure that, you know, we are informing everyone in the community, with what, you know, we've been charged with. Again, we were elected to make decisions, and a lot of those decisions that we need to make, we're going to have, I've said this over the last 3 years, a lot of these conversations that, you know, come to the board, we have a lot of times there's 50% on this side and 50% on this side, or, you know, somewhere in that realm, and balancing that and finding out what exactly the right thing is to do. So, yeah, we appreciate the comments. We hope you understand some of the answers that we have, and we hope that, you know, what we're saying not only makes sense, but is hopefully very logical and hopefully affordable.
So Jeff, to your point, and I get it, people are hurting and things aren't great, times are tough. So one of the things we've been doing as a legislative committee, the three of us on the committee, we meet with our state rep. We have three state reps, our state senator. We have the town council, 3 town councilors at our meeting. We meet quarterly. We look at ways, at bills that we can help bring more money back to the district. One of the things we talked about the last meeting was, we talked about the retained fund calculation, right? The convoluted calculation that we have right now. So one of the thoughts is, you know, what if when we have overages, they just automatically go into a capital reserve account. You don't have to worry about the whole calculation. It's an option. We're trying to think of ways to work with our delegation to bring money back to the schools, back to Derry, and offset the astronomical costs that are before us. And to answer your last question, I don't think we got to it. South Range, I think I mentioned it earlier, we'll always do emergency repairs. That's gonna happen. It won't get neglected to the point where the school's inhabitable or is not viable. It's just a must. But the problem is that, you know, focusing on new school, we don't know when that will pass. We hope it passes this March, right? It could go 1 to whatever, how many years it could go. And then our roof assessment's 1 to 3 years. And things are gonna start to come to critical mass even more so as time passes. And that's, you know, my biggest worry. I mean, like Jason said, we eat, sleep in facilities, and trying to do the best we can to address all the issues in the district and at a cost that is palatable. And right now, I would agree with you. It's tough. It's $100 million is a lot to ask. But there's ways that, you know, I reached out to the bond bank. We talked last night about the bond bank, right? You know, options to, when you do get a bond, you can invest those funds when they're just sitting there, when you're not allocating it out to vendors. So I'm gonna ask her, can we use the income off those numbers to help with offsetting costs that we will incur with the interest and principal payments that are made in the bonds? So please know that we're trying to think of out-of-the-box solutions to the problems that we have. And, you know, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but we are looking at other avenues. It's not just, let's just stick it and run forward with that kind of ask for the community. So it's, you know, like I said, last year we did the reserve. We pulled money out for roofs last year, trying to do our best. And as you saw that slide, the retained funds are going to be drastically lower than they ever have in the past. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's not. Probably not, because we got what we got going on, right? So we've, in my opinion, I think we've exhausted all the Band-Aid approaches that we can without jacking the tax rate up or going to a number. We're running out of those options, and we have to really make a decision as a community, as a board, as a community, and decide what's feasible for people to be palatable for people and what's not. And this March is at a critical tipping point, basically, because as we move further out, we don't know what's going to happen at South Range. We don't know any school. It's not just South Range, any school. And you know, you saw the West Runningbrook. You probably saw the Gale report for West Runningbrook with the route. You know, it's starting to pile up, and it's starting to get to a point where we need to start tackling them. And unfortunately, this is the route we're at right now.
Can I say something?
Of course.
What I see is the big concentration on this new school and not what you already have. And that's what people are pissed about. They just want what we already own. We own it, the town, you guys too, right? You're all town members. We all own this, but we keep hearing all about this new school and how it's gonna be great, you know, how it's gonna solve all our problems, but we already have problems. We're not dealing with our problems. Like, to Jason's point, you know, this has been years. You can't say that it isn't. It's been years, right? And we're watching. We talked about it all last year. I mean, we're kind of close to the same point we were in 2022. I feel like we haven't.
Hey, Jeff, sorry to interrupt, sorry, but I don't think the folks online can hear. No, it's not, sorry. So, we,
You get where I'm going.
again, like, yeah, I think it's, we're trying to balance it, and we're trying, and I think I've said this many times, you know, I think, with when we last year made the decision not to move forward with the new school, and, you know, even when we did, you know, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? And I think we're trying to take as big bite as possible, with balancing, you know, what we can do financially.
What information would help you understand why the new school would be the best option? Like, is there something specific that you're like, okay, this is what I would like to see so that I could get on board with this?
I'd like to see my schools fixed.
So Jeff, just to kind of address your other point, so, you know, in my professional career, you know, we look at multiple priorities at a time. So don't think that as a board or a facilities committee, we're not zoning in on one priority. We're looking at multiple priorities at the same time. And that's my background in my professional life. It may seem, and I apologize if it seems like that to the public, I apologize. We need to do a better job of messaging it, then that's on us, obviously. But rest assured, when we're in facility committee meetings, the three of us right here, we're looking at the whole picture and trying to tackle multiple problems at the same time, and with not a lot of resources, quite frankly. So please rest assured that when you think that we are addressing multiple priorities at the same time, and it just, you know, so that's just a messaging thing we need to do better. Of course, I mean, I get it. We talked about it last night. We'll have, and to answer your question, Kearney, we talked about it last night. We have a lot of work ahead of us to do that. We have to create and move forward, and we have time, but the time's running out, obviously, and we'll get there. But it's going to take a lot of work from us three and everyone else on the board to contribute to that process. And as I mentioned last night, we all have to think internally, what is our commitment level and how much time and effort can we allocate to this? And it needs to be max effort from everybody sitting at this table, right?
I've already been clear that I'm in this, ready to help with, if it's community listening sessions, if it's whatever that I can do to help in that. I know I've had multiple conversations with all three of you about this topic, so it's like, so that you guys know and the community knows as well, that, like, I feel like everyone on this board is very much, except one, but is on board with this.
All right, I feel like we've probably belabored the point long enough. So let's move on to the last agenda item, other business. Anyone have anything? Well, I don't know, might have been, but if not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. First by David, second by Kearney. All in favor of adjourning? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. Thank you all for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of your week.